Oh, God. None of us had seen this movie when we suggested
Nope.
Nope.
We just knew it was a Dungeons & Dragons movie.
We did watch it pretty immediately after, and both of us went, oh, God, how do you fix it? We just rip the whole thing up and start over.
Yeah.
In a perfect world, yes.
Yes, absolutely.
We do have suggestions, though. The second time through, we got a little bit more strategic with our recommendations.
Yeah. It was a very intentional process of like, okay, we do need to come up with something that is somewhat reasonable as a way to try to fix this absolute monstrosity.
Yeah.
Also, no offense to anyone who happens to listen to this episode who did enjoy the movie despite all of the massive issues. Like,
No,
hey,
I say offense. Huge amounts of offense. If you like this movie, there is something wrong with you.
I mean, I was going to say,
Much offense.
if you can find joy in this movie, then I deeply envy your optimism for life, because I couldn't find any redeeming qualities.
It's really kind of you. I think maybe you're really like, hey, you might be delusional. Seek help. But it's fine. I like your take on it too. That's very kind.
Welcome to Certain POV's Another Pass podcast with Case and Sam, where we take another look at movies that we find fascinating but flawed. Let's see how we could have fixed them.
Hey, everyone, and welcome back to the Another Pass podcast. I'm Case Aiken, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Sam Alisea.
Hi.
Sam, it is so great to have you on here. Clearly, you rolled good initiative because I introduced you first, but we've got some guests with us today, don't we?
We do. I'm excited.
So from Amateurish Productions, we've got Katie DeMatteis.
Yes, hi. Hello. I thought you were going to introduce both of us. It's me. I'm Katie. I am a Twitch streamer. I am a writer. I am a marketer. If you are a TTRPG person, you would probably, if you were gonna know me at all, know me from Amateurish Productions over on Twitch. Otherwise, probably wouldn't know me from marketing. So that's my intro.
Yeah, and also we have America's Fiancé, Ben MartinMooney.
Oh my goodness. That joke has got to die at some point. Hi, I'm Ben. I am only one person's fiance and future husband in a legal sense, but you would know me presumably from also AP. If you do know me as America's Fiance, you would know me from Brian Foster's stream. And I also do TTRPG things. I write, I do video game things. That I don't know. I'm not good at introducing myself. I'll be really honest.
It's okay. It's okay, because no matter how much you can fail that role, the thing that we were talking about today is not just a single critical. It's not just a double critical. Somehow it's a triple critical of failure.
Yes.
Today,
yes,
I have gathered you all to roll initiative against the 2000 Dungeons and Dragons movie.
Yeah.
One of the worst pieces of film. Can we call it film?
Okay, wait.
I think technically...
Well, TSR wouldn't consider it film.
Ooh, true.
Listen, it is technically a film because it technically went to theaters and was shot, and there are real actors. Like, honestly, real Scar.
Real actors.
That's right.
Scar
Yeah.
is in this movie. Jeremy Irons is in this movie.
He's amazing.
He's
outside of this.
a for real actor, and he was in possibly a different movie than everyone else at the level of intensity that he was in this movie.
Also true.
Which was giving. Like, I enjoyed it. Like, I was like, yes. Like, I wish that the rest of everyone else met him at the camp level he was doing, because then this film that was devoid of any joy would have had something in it.
I do have to give credit where credit is due. His little blue-lipped henchman who looks like he has, you know those like peel-off lipsticks that you sometimes will get like ads for?
Yes.
Looks like he just forgot to peel them off. He also is like really given the camp and like the like turns and stomps away and little like moody eyes. I gotta give him a little bit of credit.
They
as
were
well.
definitely in the same movie. No one else was in the movie they were in.
Nobody
Like
else.
at all. Although I will say I really hated the lipstick choice because I felt like it was just lazy. Like we're gonna make him look totally different. We're just gonna put blue lips on him and that's it. Yep.
Well, he was also playing a sword-wielding, campy villain in the same year in Highlander Endgame. So they had to do something to kind of distinguish the two roles right there.
Of course.
And that was the best they could do. I'm just saying, there's just effort. Effort is not the name of the game of this film.
I don't know about that, because that was my assumption after I saw this movie. Full disclosure for everyone, we selected to talk about this movie with none of us having seen it, just knowing that we wanted to talk about a Dungeons & Dragons movie, hopefully for it to align roughly with the release of the next Dungeons & Dragons movie, Honor Among Thieves. And all of our reactions when we watched it was just, oh no, oh. And that was basically the text that we each sent around to each other. So.
Like, please make it stop.
But doing some research on this movie, this was a labor of love that could, honestly could have been way better. Like, if things had just gone a little differently and the movie had gotten pushed through a couple years earlier, it actually might have had a budget. It actually might have had a real director. It might have had real writers. Like, it would have been a totally different thing. And instead, this was almost sort of like one of the cleanup efforts between TSR being bought out by Wizards of the Coast. And it was just sort of like, oh, well, fuck, we have to do this, don't we? Fuck, okay. Like, kind of movie. And as a result, it is not good.
If I'm remembering my D&D 2000 history correctly, the producer was A, quite young, and B, forced to direct the movie as well, which was not his initial intention. He was just trying to put up the money for the production and ended up also directing the entire thing with zero experience, from what I recall. I could be wrong, but
that is
I'm
correct.
pretty sure that's what happened.
One of the intended directors was Francis Ford. Is it Coppola? Coppola?
I think.
I say Coppola, and I just think of like a Coppola, like a on like a tank or something. You could like open it.
I think of Capricola. Is that what it is? The meat?
Capricola. Okay. Oh, there you go. But I mean, that's the guy that directed like The Godfather. Yeah. Like Apocalypse Now.
Jack.
The potential for this to be a really good movie was quite high.
Oh yeah, James Cameron was also at one point in discussion for it.
There you
go.
Like, just a ridiculous list of people involved in this movie, almost, and every single one of them would have been so much better.
Except for Jeremy Irons, who did somehow get. Do you think that they spent their entire budget on Jeremy Irons? Like, this is a genuine question.
I mean, definitely the actors, because also, like, so Marlon Wayans is also in this movie, and he's a fairly big star at this point. Like, this is right around, like, the Scary Movies.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, I imagine he at least had a decent payout. Thora Birch was a rising star. This is right around American Beauty.
Yeah.
Everyone else, not so much, but... I mean, maybe Justin Wayland at this point, an exact moment in his career, is commanding quite a bit of money from working on Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman.
Sure.
Probably not.
Probably not.
But certainly there are a couple of actors of renown in this movie, which is additional weird parts to it all. I'm not really worried about the actors so much as the direction and the setting for it all.
Yeah.
Because...
like the script, the special effects. Yeah, all that other stuff. Yeah. They are special. They are very special.
So many moments during this movie where I was like, why did that need to be CGI'd? Like
the blood,
yes.
Oh, the blood,
yeah. I was like, this looks so bad. Like, it would have been better to just pour syrup.
Ketchup.
Yes.
Like anything.
Watered down ketchup.
Yes.
Anything.
Honestly, anything red. Kool-Aid would have looked
I was about
better.
to say Kool-Aid.
like, it was so terrible. It was so bad that I was just like, oh my God, just skip it. Don't even do the blood. Like, don't even do it.
Seriously.
Like, and the shot starts so oddly because in order to see the blood, they zoom into Jeremy Irons' henchman's boots, which seems totally like out. Like you're like, what? Why are they zooming in? And then they go straight down to his soles of feet, and then you see the blood. And I'm like, this is such a weird shot. Like I was so distracted for half a second. Like
It's
what
it's
special
creative
about this?
cinematography, okay?
But it looks so bad. It almost looks as bad as the opening credits to House of the Dragon.
True.
Spicy.
We're feeling punchy.
Okay.
Starting strong.
But also, speaking of opening credits, very quickly, either Ben and I both missed this or they completely skipped over title cards.
Yes, I also noticed that
Okay,
too. 'Cause
all right.
I had my camera up ready to take a picture
Same,
when the
me
title
too,
card popped
same.
up, and it didn't. And like I swear I've seen somewhere on the internet an image that appeared to be the title card, but just not on the version that was streaming.
That Ben and I both wrote that down as like, we're like, well, here's an easy fix. Make a title card.
I was like, listen, are we ranking it in this day and age? If you can't Instagram that you're at the movies watching the movie, then you were never there. So, first and foremost, let's fix it from the social media aspect.
Yeah. Every aspect of this movie just fucked. Like production, directing, screenwriting, etc. Just fucked.
Can I just say the one thing I would keep in this movie and maybe elongate that goddamn maze sequence because I loved it.
Yeah.
Actually quite good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a nice moment to actually have a dungeon in a Dungeons and Dragons movie.
Yeah.
That, actually, like, it felt diegetic, and it felt like an interesting twist on what you would do to, like, we're gonna have to talk about like the nature of D&D as
Yes.
a movie, because D&D is a game, and so, and that you can tell stories with of any kind. So we'll have to get into that, but like that felt like a good spot of like, all right, this is leaning into the game aspect of Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes.
I thought that was very cool. Who wouldn't love to see like Guts or American Gladiators just like in a fantasy setting, like in the universe of the fantasy setting?
Yes.
Hell yeah.
I would honestly taken more puzzle traps and less of everything else.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel I don't know. Do you want to like go through the movie chronologically, or is it okay?
Yeah, we
like,
can. I mean, we can.
Okay,
we
cool.
can talk about like major points on that one.
Yeah, because
good,
I've
our
got some
notes
thoughts
are
on that one,
chronological.
but like
Because there's
later
just
on.
so much to talk about.
There
and
is-
we will
Yeah.
just keep going in circles.
Yes.
But I mean, let's still focus on kind of the opening and talk like how they set up their characters, because I think it's a little ass backwards. Although I have a thought about how they could make the opening scene work kind of okay. But it needs to be more of a teaser, because then we get like the shitty blood that goes into the river and then sets it all on fire, and like, all right, well, that's an idea. Like, that's a cool enough idea, and everyone being like, those mages are at it again. Like, is them trying to set up this like world, but I don't like the characters, and also, aside from that opening being like, there's oppression by the mages on the commoners, which is an idea I like.
Yeah.
like there's a social justice theme going on in this, and I'm like, cool, that's good. But then it's like, those damn mages. What do you got to say everything about the mages? Like, what? Like, instantly introducing us to our two terrible leads, and it's not because they couldn't pull off good leads. It's that it's just they weren't given good scripts, and then they weren't given good things to do, and everything.
It gets a little like weird because, right, they do this oppression thing, and then like later on they kind of both sides it. So like it kind of gets uncomfortable. Like it's like a good idea, except that like the mage is like, hey, I have problems too, and you don't know the Empress is trying to change everything. She's good, and it's like, oh right, no, stop. Like this feels real weird. I don't like it.
I just felt like they needed, there's two ways they could have taken this. I think the first direction is like, give us a little bit more why. Give us a little bit more exposition. Like, how did the mages get to this place? Like, are all mages evil? Is it this sort of like corrupt council, which is what we see a lot of, this like council of like magi or whatever. Why is the princess so pro equality? Because that feels like, given her upbringing, it feels a little weird that she is just suddenly like, actually, I think we should all be happy and equal. So I feel like giving like more exposition, more why. Or the other idea that I don't remember, I think I kind of came up with it and then Ben sort of riffed on it. No, because Ben, I said it needs to be Princess Bridie. That was what I said.
Okay, you did say Princess Bridie.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fair.
Is to take it from the angle of like, a dad or like a mom telling his kids about like the first D&D campaign that he ever ran.
Yeah, that was
And
I was like, what? Like, make it like a, hey, I'm trying to get my kids to play D&D with me. I'm gonna tell you about my first like campaign or one shot or whatever.
I have a very similar note, actually.
so but then
Like,
any of the
cool.
shit that doesn't
Yeah.
make sense, you can sort of like hand wave and be like, you know, like the dwarf that makes literally why is he there? Be like, oh, that was like my older brother who was home from college who like came in stoned and like wanted to play with us, and we like had to like whatever. That's not like the best way that you could.
That was Bobby.
explain it.
He missed section 0, but we
Right,
needed him in for there.
exactly. So you can give like little reasons why all of these things just make no sense, and you can even have like meta commentary of the kids being like, why? And the dad being like, look, it was my first campaign ever. I didn't know what the fuck.
Look, guys, I was 12. What do you expect from me? I've gotten better. You know, like you can sort of like make it this lighthearted thing where it's like, okay, so you can take your absolutely like god awful script and turn it into a like self-referential, self-aware script by just adding a little bit of meta commentary from time to time to be like, yeah, it's not great. I know it's not great. Like plot development, I was 12. I don't know how to develop characters yet. I just thought it'd be like a fun thing.
I'm worried about us going too far into pitch territory.
Yeah.
Already.
Well, my favorite part
Because
about
I'm like-
this is that what we're really proving is that this movie is severely lacking, right? Because like we're like, and then you don't have to worry about the lack of plot or character development or explaining why some people are sitting at a table with others with food in their beard, which is disgusting, and they do several shots into that food beard, which is disgusting. Did I mention that it was disgusting and it was played for comedy, but it wasn't funny?
I had a specific point to address those shots. She's like, oh yeah, my brother showed up drunk because he was home from college and I begged him to play D&D and he like showed back up and then he pulls out a rotisserie chicken, which he proceeds to eat. And then a second rotisserie chicken, which he also proceeds to eat at the table with us, which is why we have these like weird shots of his character just eating chicken and nothing else. I was like, just yeah,
Give us a reason.
Yeah, like, anything to make those shots sort of funny. I don't even know if you can.
Yeah, I mean, I think let's take a step further back from getting into too much of the specifics at the moment, because I think we do actually need to set up why this movie was so bad, because we talked a little bit about it, but
Yeah.
So the director / everything on this movie was Courtney Solomon, who got the rights somehow when he was 19 to make this damn movie. Now and then 10 years later, they finally made this damn movie. And that corresponds to when TSR, which had been the original publisher for Dungeons and Dragons, was bought out by Wizards of the Coast. And there's a lot to be said about the mismanagement of the later years of TSR. And that goes a lot into the development hell that went into this all. And then Wizards of the Coast didn't really want anything to do with this movie. So they were like, no, fuck, make this movie now. Like you've got basically zero money. And it was kind of like a Roger Corman kind of situation with the Fantastic Four movie, where it was just like, well, we got to do it for rights purposes. And that's why they went to an older draft of the script, because they'd been working on it for a decade at that point and had much better versions that I don't fully understand. Like, there might be some like who they want to pay out kind of situation. And then there might be some like just being an asshole trying to like purposefully bomb going on here, because that seems to be kind of part of the story. But they had to go with an earlier version of the script. They had they had a way more limited budget. They got a theatrical release, but it was like basically a TV movie. Like, we're talking about like a nothing kind of project with a first time director with like, novice and like cheap special effects studios. Like, this is very much in the caliber of what you would see just a few years later for like fan films.
Yeah, that's
Or worse, honestly.
Yeah,
I'm sure there were some better fan films. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah. So we're really seeing like a movie that was very much not getting off on the right foot from any perspective on that one. And unfortunately, this also kind of goes with like what they were trying to do initially, which was to do a D&D movie that was not system or like setting specific, I should say. It's not in any of the classic, like it's not Greyhawk, it's not Mystara, it's not the Forgotten Realms. Like they're very much trying to just be like, here's generic D&D, but they didn't want to do the framing device, which also the fact that it was addressed as a thing that Solomon didn't want to have as be part of the story. I'm like, oh, well, that's also kind of a bummer. Maybe you should rethink it once the whole budget situation happened. But but they wanted to do here's just generic D&D, the movie, go enjoy. And given all the things we just talked about, you can see why you can't go generic D&D on such a micro budget with such novices involved in here, because you're not they weren't skilled enough to set up the giant world that they're trying to set up, and then they don't have the special effects to like show all the things that they want to show about the giant world that they're trying to set up, and then you're just in it the whole time. There's no like slow trickle out. There's no here's our everyman like being introduced into this world. Like, it's just, we're going to make generic fantasy and call it D&D and have nothing that's like specific to D&D aside from like a couple of like very, very specific, like the beholders and stuff like that.
Well,
and that's more just like Easter eggs.
Yeah.
What I would say too is that if you're going to go full just kind of fantasy, calling it D&D, at least use like races and classes and spells that you would see. And I know like at the time that this came out, I believe 2E was the edition that was like around, or had been around rather, like when this was being made.
So when this comes out, this is right at the launch of 3rd edition.
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
So I think it would have been based on 2 or 2.5, just because if it was launching with 3rd, I don't know that. Whatever. But point being is, I don't think that there was a single... I mean, arguably that weird rope thing she does could be hold person, I guess. But like, for the most part,
like
until
no one even casts fireball for God's sake. Like, come on.
There's never a time where really magic, other than like the big scenes. This might be a CGI thing, right? This might be because they wanted to use effects. But there's never a time where anyone even like pretends to be silenced, or like, like there are things that you could have simply done, like low level spells, like that possibly didn't need you to like have some. They didn't do any of that. There's also no real team anything. Like, one of the best things about D&D is that you're a team battling things. And because, we have this male protagonist that has to prove himself heart of gold, like most, just generic fantasy, we don't really ever get like real team building, team anything, which easily could have been done in the script. We get none of that. Zero. Like, he's basically always going off on his own. It's like every trial is like, well, now you have to go do this alone. And I'm like, really? This is boring. Like, there's no real chance for it to have interaction, or for you to even develop those other characters together, right? Like, one of the things that, like, in basic fantasy that is so great is, like, as a kid, my favorite parts of Lord of the Rings was them sitting around the campfire. Not necessarily like the battle scenes or like running from ring wraiths or stuff like that. It was the team getting to know each other. You don't get any of that really in this movie. You just have snails sexually harassing people and making terrible jokes, and like, a little bit of this and that, and a thief with a heart of gold, and I don't know. Like, it's just a lot. It's just a lot of not a good script.
Also, I have such an issue with the snails character, because it is such a racist stereotype of Black people. And then, like, to give him this sort of in servitude to... I'm literally forgetting the name of the main guy, but like, there are times where like the main guy will throw something on the ground and like tell snails to pick it up, and I'm just like, this is a problem. Even if you swapped the two main actors, it would have felt less problematic. But it's still weird.
Still a problem.
Still weird.
Right.
Still a problem. Still weird. But like, especially to make him like this like bumbling Black best friend who like all he wants to do is hit on women and like is kind of not very intelligent. And I was just like, this is a problem.
And listen, Snails gets the rough end of the stick. Like, even though he's a terrible character, like they did him dirty. Like, the way that he dies, when
Oh
he
my
dies in the
God.
film. Like,
Yeah.
all of that stuff, like, is really terrible. And, like, that thing at the end doesn't redeem all the things they did to poor
No.
snails throughout the course of the film.
No,
It's-
it really
And also, we
doesn't.
should pause and note what thing, because like I still don't fully understand
Is it
what
the
happened at the end there.
Philosopher's Stone? Can he resurrect people? Is he actually a necromancer? What is he? What is our main character? What is his class?
Also, apparently they had less of a budget as a party to build some kind of memorial to him than the film had for its special
Oh God,
effects.
that gravestone was so pathetic.
Like, hey, we stacked a couple rocks.
Yeah.
Love you, snails.
Well, not only that, but then they have like in the background like stock like crowd sounds. So it's like, oh, we got to go get back to this thing. It's like, wait, are
He's
you, like, in a
going to
park?
be
Like, where-
knighted. He's going to be knighted at the end of the movie for everything that he's done. And poor Snails only gets some rocks? Like, are you serious? He gave up his life in service to end this war. Like, he is the person that made the biggest sacrifice out of all the people standing there. And you're like, well, buddy, you're just outside of city limits. And we're just going to pile these rocks on each other. And we carved your name, Snails, no inscription, by the way, about what you did or who you are, into this rock. And you did real good, buddy. You did real good. I'm going to go get my reward. Bye.
You know, it could have actually been worse, and it was almost worse
No.
because initially they wanted Snails to be a half orc, but still like this racist caricature.
oh,
and
no.
Oh.
yeah,
That's bad.
I didn't know that.
I know it's just
Listen, it's just, it's Snail, you know, justice for Snails. Like, he's not a great character,
Justice for
but
Snails.
honestly, his treatment was terrible. The script needs, someone needs to come to justice for that whole
Yeah.
character.
yeah.
Agreed.
Well,
Fully agreed.
Sam, I think you bring up one of my key points in talking about Dungeons and Dragons and how you would convert it into a movie versus what just generic fantasy is, because you brought up the exact part, which is that it's not about just like a one protagonist situation. Like, that's not D&D. D&D is about a group of people, and that means that you actually have, like, by default, it has to be an ensemble cast and not just one where you have a hero and a supporting cast. Like, we needed the party to be. We needed this to be more Lord of the Rings and less The Hobbit.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a great analogy. Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're getting with this movie, where we have our central generic white male lead, but everyone else completely functions in the service of his arc, to the point that, as you point out, there's all these like adventures that he has to go on and everyone else is just an observer, which is insane. Like, it should like we all like the dungeon guts like obstacle course thing. Why isn't it all four of them?
Yep.
Yeah. That's like one of the notes we had was like,
Yeah.
put them all in the fucking dungeon.
And make it
like, I don't
longer.
understand.
Like, give
Yeah,
each one
yeah,
of them
they-
a moment to shine and like show their skill and whatever, you know, in the way that hopefully you would have an opportunity to do in a dungeon when you're playing actual D&D, right? Like, giving everybody a chance to be like, oh yeah, this is my skill set. Like, I can do this, makes A, for a better dungeon crawl if that's what you're doing, and B, makes the game more enjoyable, which in turn would have also made the movie more enjoyable because we want to see that, right? Like, we want to see the mage do her thing. We want to see Snails.
What snails this thing?
I don't know. That's also part of it. It's like, you know, the dwarf gets angry if you knock his hat off, and Snails,
Yeah,
Snails tries to convince you to run away and steal another day. That's his phrase. But you can even have that scene like just be Snails and him, since they are the thieves, the rogue class. Well, you know, they don't really specify classes, but let's say they're our thieves, right? That's their thing. And you can have that moment, like, you know, but like, especially at the end, there's never any time where there's like actual battles. Like, even when he goes in to get the artifact that they need to basically defeat it and win this war and make sure that like Jeremy Irons is not going to win with his crazy eyes, which are amazing. Like, he still goes by himself. Like, he still goes by himself. Like, what? And, like, the mage doesn't even get to heal anyone. Like, that could have been easy. She could have placed her hand on someone, and then they could have gotten better. Like, come on. There's so many things.
Yeah.
Or like I didn't understand when they went in to go save the mage. I love how I know no one's name but Snails. When they go in to save the mage.
Worst character, only name we remember.
I know.
That's the real justice for Snails.
Because everyone knows his name. Yeah. So the ranger and the dwarf are like outside waiting, and the dwarf is kind of like looks at the ranger and is like, why are we out here? And she's like, they have to do this alone. And I'm like, why do they have to do this? Like, there is no reason whatsoever why this incredibly talented tracker who is like the creme de la creme cannot go in and help them. Like, they gotta do it alone. Why? Like, give me a reason, please. I'm begging you.
Yeah, it's so weird, and it's also this weird aspect. So I have this note, and I actually came to an answer by the time I'd like finished writing the note out, which is like, why is every D&D movie about a group of thieves? Like, why is that the go-to for every D&D structure as opposed to any other class? And the realization was like, oh well, it's the tradition of the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, where like the hobbits are like the thieves of the party, and it's always from their perspective. But there are so many movies out there that we say are just like D&D. Like you look at your Star Wars movies, for example, like where it's like, oh yeah, I can see the party form right there. And it's not about the thief. You don't have to have every story be about that. But if it is going to be about that, do a proper heist movie. Like, and then you can have justifications for your party being together and like they're a part of a team that's trying to steal shit. And like, don't try to muddy the water by having it be a chosen one, like dashing knight story and also the thief story. Like, no, have him be like, have Justin Whalen's character, which is his name is Ridley Freeborn, be a fucking thief, like be a proper thief, or a bard, because he's dressed like a bard for most of the movie, which would have also been fine. Like,
which by the way, his last jacket at Snail's grave, that was a killer jacket. Go on.
That was a good look.
Yeah, that was
really
a good look.
That
I was actually like, oh, a good look, and I was like, that's the one positive thing you have to say, Sam. Wow. The end of the movie.
So here's the thing. As far as having him sort of like be a bard or whatever, I think that the reason that they weren't able to do that is a better bard rogue movie came out in 2000, which was The Road to El Dorado. So they couldn't hijack that because it was already taken, and they did a much better job. And I will die on this hill, so don't at me, Twitter, if you're listening.
I mean, also the 2E bard is like kind of whatever in terms of
that's fair.
What we ultimately get to. The bard fluctuates so much in terms of like the usability in the game.
Absolute fact.
Fair enough, but it could have been the bard's moment. Let's just say,
yeah,
this movie didn't really follow a lot of rules, so I'm just saying
that's true.
But what's scary is us saying the bard, or like he could be a bard and yada yada yada. It does actually feel very much like we're talking about the new one that's coming out. It's just like, which is definitely not trying to do anything like this movie. Like, it's not trying to be this movie, but better. Like, it's just trying to be its own movie, but it's still falling into the same archetypes, and we're still talking about it in the same way.
Well, I mean, I think the problem is that this movie didn't do D&D at all. So you couldn't really do this movie but better and make it a D&D movie because it's just not. Like, fundamentally, it's missing, like, the core elements that make D&D D&D.
Yeah, that's true. It did have dragons, and it did have dungeons.
It did have dragons and dungeons.
It starts strong with a dungeon in a or a dragon in a dungeon.
A dungeon in a dragon.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
But also, that dragon was so easy to kill. Did anyone else write that down? Because I was like...
Yeah.
Very heavy dungeon door. Very, very heavy. Very solid.
When we get into pitches, I have a thought about how to make that scene work way better and also just be more fun for everyone. But like, this whole movie is not referential to the thing it's coming from, the D&D stuff, but it's also just could be more referential for fun ways anyway. Like, how cool would it be if they had a system where they talked about spells as in like Vancian magic with spell slots? Because that is unique. That's a unique thing. Not, I know D&D didn't invent it. I know that it comes from like specific fantasy where it's like you can memorize the spell and it goes away, stuff that I don't remember because I just remember reading that D&D pulled it from a fantasy series. But most fantasy at this point adopts like a mana or like a personal reserve of strength, or we have to kill a person by draining their life to do the spell thing. And like, how much more interesting would it be if there was some kind of system in play where like they didn't like, they were aware that everyone had spells in like spell slots, but maybe some sort of meter for the mages to be able to tell, or like jewelry that glowed or something like that to indicate it. Something that you could have a thing that is so inherently tied to D&D and specifically D&D and games that are like it and and this like one lineage instead of just generic fantasy. You know, play into those kind of elements. Like again, that's one of the reasons I like the maze in this, or like the like, because that feels like a dungeon that you're being put in as part of like a module in a game. Like I think that's a cool element there. So, you know, lean into that, lean into other classes. Like, I don't want it to be necessarily to the degree that like an R.A. Salvatore book where it's just like, but you're a ranger. But you thief are going to, you know, like the way that like the first Driss book is like every character is just like, yes, well, but he's a fighter over there. Like, but you know, put one or two, have a holy knight or a cleric, you know, like do the things that are really distinct and iconic to D&D specifically.
I mean, honestly, just give me something a little more.
Yes.
Like just a tiny bit more magic. Give me some characters. Don't just put random blue guys with eyeballs in their head. There are so many. They're already you know, species. Is that the new term they're using? I have a problem with that too. There are already like races and things like that in D&D. Why are we just? What are we doing? You bought the rights. Use what you got.
Yeah.
There were so many easy swaps too, like that weird thing that gets put into that guy's head. Like, make it look like an intellect devourer or something like that. Like, give it like any sort of already extant D&D monster that does something to your brain. Make it look like that. It like so many just like easy swaps out that wouldn't have even taken like extra CGI or taken like, you know, more to the plot. Just change the things that are already there. Like change the spells that are already being cast to something that has a similar effect, because almost everything they cast has some kind of close equivalent.
Or even
because it's all generic magic. Every spell has been done in D&D at this point.
Mm-hmm.
You could even go so far as to just reference, be like, do you want me to use Fireball? And then be like, no, don't do that. We're walking into a small, like, you don't have to CG, like, if your issue is that our CGI budget is $12.
And all we can do is brown dragons. The dirtiest brown dragons we can.
It was so bad. Like, then just reference an iconic spell. Eldritch Blast. Come on. Is there anything more D&D than Fireball or Eldritch Blast? Maybe, like,
at this point,
hands, but, you know.
because this is pre the introduction of the Warlock period.
That's fair.
Yeah. But Fireball is like super distinct. Magic Missile.
Magic Missile, also a classic.
Like, and Magic Missile, I have to imagine, is very easy. Like, because I could come up with a way in Premiere right now just to do a Magic Missile without
I could do
any
it with
real
some like paper mache and fishing line. I mean,
you could do just like some sparklers or something that goes across or something. Yeah,
I mean, honestly,
very easy ones.
You could have added humor by having her shout "Magic Missile" and for it to not happen, and Snails go, "Is something supposed to happen?" Because that would have actually been a funny line.
That would have been great.
I've used up all my spell slots.
There you go.
Or and again, getting back to the Vancian thing, also the fact that they traditionally had to prepare each spell individually so that it's like, no, I already cast that spell today, I can't cast it again, would be a really good moment there just to be like, yep, this is a D&D thing that we're dealing with right now.
Yeah. I mean, like, honestly, for me, like, these would all be wonderful, but I don't even know if I needed to be that specific. Like, I needed just any direction. Like, I feel like even I don't even think that the characters knew what they were playing. Like, I don't think that our protagonist knows where he sits in the world of D&D. Like, who is he? What is he? He clearly has some sort of magic, but he's not a mage. And he is a thief, but he's got a heart of gold, right? Does he have a secret lineage? Does he know who he is? That's all. I just need to know that the actors know what class they are playing.
I don't think they did.
Exactly. That's my biggest problem. Like, we're getting technical here, and that's great, but we don't even need to get technical. My biggest problem is that even on the most basic level, I don't know their role in this movie, in this team. Like, I know, like, well, no, I only know Snail's name, but I know like that this is like the hero and this is the love interest and here's the person that Snails falls in love with but hates him. And I know that that's who they are in terms of the script, but what are they really, right? Like, do they know related to D&D? I don't think they do. And that's a problem.
I got one. So for a movie that actually the plot hinges very dramatically on the different types of dragons that are out there in the world, they don't do a very good job of explaining that there are different types of dragons or doing anything with that. Because it's like, oh, I have a scepter that controls gold dragons explicitly. And then there's another scepter that controls red dragons specifically. And at no point do they stop to be like, oh, there's a shitload of different types of dragons in the world. And that's the big important thing in this setting for whatever reason. And that's why there's magic like this. Or even just being like, of all the different flights of dragons, you command the gold or something. Like, go, because they like, I understood when it was like, oh, it's the thing that allows you to control red dragons. It was like, oh, they're actually focusing on it, but like, they don't really.
Yeah.
they don't tell you about this.
They
at all,
give you that
let alone
like
show
brief
you.
snippet, and then they're like, "Cool, so now you've got that exposition. You can kind of,
Yeah.
go from there on your own, and we'll just mosey on to the next bit of plot, if you want to call it that."
Yeah.
Something.
I mean, there's just so much mess. I mean, at some point, I was just like, wait, why? Oh, right, the dragons. Because by the time we got back to Jeremy Irons, to the Empress, who comes in and out, like honestly, it's just like, what is this? What is this part of the
Why are you
storyline?
here?
What purpose do you actually serve?
Do you even go here?
Yeah, exactly. Like, and it's just, it gets so muddled and lost by the time you get to the end of the, like, I was just like, oh, right, the artifact is for the like, I forgot why they were going to find it.
Someone remind me, did the Empress dismantle monarchy or just say she was going to rule better?
I don't remember.
You know what? I don't know if they were actually clear about that. Like, she said that the mages weren't going to be able to bully the commoners, and that commoners and mages would, she was gonna like dismantle like basically like the equivalent of like their Congress and Parliament, but that doesn't make things better, right?
That makes her a dictator.
She's removing the checks and balances of the governing system is what
Right.
she's
But
doing.
like, but only those
Or is
people.
she advancing the House of Commons in this like situation? Like the House of Lords have been set up pretty well, and it's like now we're going to give some more power.
Maybe
Political power.
that's not what it felt like. It felt like she was disbanding the council because they were crooked and she was not. I feel like this is a lead up to a second movie where she actually is a fascist taking over and she lied to everyone. And
Aha,
They deal
so
with like
this-
the wealth discrepancy between the nobles and the commoners, because the reason they're commoners is because they don't have any money, which is being hoarded by the elites. And I just feel like we didn't deal with any of that.
no, we didn't. And like there was not like really like anything, and it wasn't even just like the elite. It was specifically mages. Like it was specifically mages. Like it was like, I was like, so is the currency magic?
It definitely feels like that.
But don't they buy things with gold?
Right, exactly. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I mean,
Like,
other
why
than
would
like,
they
I
be
guess mages
robbing?
can bully you. They can tie you up when you don't want to be tied up and then take your gold.
Ooh,
Like,
fun.
Or when you do want to be.
I'm throwing all these questions out because I feel like Case may or may not have theories. He always has some weird fact.
I mean, I will say that this all goes along better with the whole, this is my, like, the script I wrote, or the, rather, well, it goes in the real world with the script that he wrote when he was 19, all here, but also it goes really well with, like, oh, the DM was 12 when he came up with this campaign.
Yes.
It's just a
Yeah.
bigger scenario. Because, like, this is, sorry to go lefty for a moment here, but I know I'm in good company. Like
Hell yeah,
this is
brother.
very much like a liberal's like concept of progress, where it's like, okay, like everyone should be equal, but we don't want to give up anything. We like there's like this feeling of like white guilt, but at the same time not actually being willing to like take any of the steps to make the world better.
I mean, like, and he's just joining the ruling class because he's going to be knighted. Like,
Yes.
after he
Also
does
true.
all of that stuff, he's like, well, sorry, snails, gotta go get knighted. Have fun
You
in your
poor
pauper's
bitches.
grave because that's what I got you.
But it's okay because he cried really dramatically when Snails died.
That's true. That is true.
I
you
mean,
Put that one stone, like, that honestly probably could have been spent better anywhere else. Like,
Yeah.
just saying.
I mean, I will say by that point in the movie, they clearly have no budget. Like the shot itself, it's just like a random park that they're in. There's nothing to make it look like it's a medieval setting. It doesn't look like they're near a crowd of people. That's why it's just like awkward, like stock audio in the background. Like it's like, do you hear that in the distance? I got a ceremony over that way. I'm gonna go there, but they're not close. They're not even like at like a Ren fair or something. Like it doesn't look like it looks like they had no money and we're like, fuck. Well, we got some rocks. We can paint on one of the rocks.
Yeah, I feel like the whole thing very much like to that point of sort of like white liberalism. It's very, or 12-year-old child making a story, both work. It's very like black versus white in the sense of like good versus bad. And it's like, ooh, evil mages. Ooh, good party. I don't even want to call them a party because they weren't really a party. Or like, you know, like good for goodness' sake and evil for evilness' sake. And there's no gray area, which works fine if it's a D&D campaign that a 12-year-old is putting on, because like that, you know, that tracks, right? It's sort of like, I expect the bad people to be bad and the good people to be good. Whatever, fine.
Well, and the players can fill out meaning.
Yeah.
Like that's the other thing. Like some of these stories work well in D&D specifically because the players can like have their headcanon for everything. They can elaborate on the relationships and all that because it's a big collaborative thing, as opposed to like a singular, like this movie is less politically nuanced than Phantom Menace.
Yes.
I was
You're not
actually
wrong.
thinking about Phantom Menace when I was watching this film, especially like the scenes with the council where Jeremy Irons is basically like convincing everyone that the Empress is wrong. And I was like, this feels a lot like Palpatine. And it feels a lot like that moment in the Senate. Like this feels exactly the same. This is the same moment, and it's going to lead nowhere. And I was right.
We have a note somewhere about them ripping off Star Wars. I don't remember exactly what it was in reference to, but
I mean, the note that I remember about Star Wars is like, y'all's animation was worse than Star Wars, which came out many years before this. I do. But while we're in the process of talking about this, too, I do want to like call out the one thing that I would not change at all, which is Jeremy Burnett did a bang up job with the music for this movie.
the music was actually really good.
I genuinely enjoyed it, and I know that there are lots of people who have critiqued it, saying that it was like intrusive and too much, but I genuinely enjoyed the music, and I thought that they did it, that he did a very good job with the score.
I
It
think
gave
why
me Lord
it's
of the Rings.
I think why it's intrusive is because the score has joy and humor, and the movie itself does not. This movie is devoid of that.
But like the opening sequence, I was like, oh, this is kind of like it's giving the like sounds terrible, but it makes me think of like this movie theater in Boston where they used to play just like generic movie theater sounds, like songs in the bathroom. And I was like, this is the kind of song they would have played in that bathroom. Like it gives me that feel good, just like basic like Hollywood sounding vibes.
Yeah, it's doing the job that the movie was kind of overall trying to do, but
Yes.
actually doing it capably.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's
I think
doing
it's right.
heavy lifting.
In
And the
a
movie
sense
is
of-
not
so
meeting
hard.
it where it's taking it. Like,
Yeah.
The movie
it's
is
not.
actively running in the other direction.
The movie is drowning it. It is a rock pulling the music down.
It's all three of Snails' rocks on his grave just pulling down.
Oh, too soon.
Justice for snails.
Just-
JFS.
I hope that's not the catchphrase of this episode. I'm so sorry. He is a terrible, terrible character. Please do not believe people listening to this. If you are brave enough after listening to this episode to actually tune in and watch this film, do not believe that I am defending Snails. He is awful. He is a bad person. But he does give his life. He does sacrifice himself, and he does love his friend.
But at the same
Kind
time,
of.
he is a serial harasser.
Absolutely.
and caricature
Like,
and
yeah.
stereotype
Yes. Yeah.
and a problem.
Yeah.
Yes.
Also, like, was not lost on me that they paired up the singular or I guess dual black people in this movie romantically. They
Mhm.
paired them up.
Yeah.
Also, they put the Ranger in plate, which I know is like a very small thing, but just did need to call that out because
With
Rangers don't wear
nipples.
plate.
The armor
Yeah,
has
I was about
nipples.
to say,
with nipples.
I'm less concerned about the chest plate than how the chest plate looks.
She also had like a very defined abdomen area with
Yes.
a belly button.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like I was just like, really a V shape and leading to a belly button. Come on, y'all.
Yeah, it was a
Terrible.
choice. Also, the costumes, like I do want to understand because some of the costumes were interesting and the others were just like Did you walk into a Goodwill and go, this works,
I
and
think
then
you did.
go to
Oh,
set?
I said out loud that like the top that the mage girl is wearing, and I'm not going to look her name up right now. The top that she's wearing throughout of it, you could have bought at Hot Topic in 1999.
Oh my God. Yes,
Yeah.
Honestly, that's probably what they did.
That's probably when
I
got
think
it.
so.
Like, genuinely.
Yeah. Like there's a couple costumes where it's like, okay, you rented this from a costume shop. And then there are others where it's just like, okay, well, this looks velvety-ish and like is good for, like a mage
Velvety-ish.
character. Or here's our extremely
Which I
generic
think
chest plate.
makes the chest plate that much more egregious because
Yes.
they literally went out and rented that or found it or had it made. And that was like the one thing that they spent money on. And that is horrible. Like
Horrifying.
it's bad.
Well, and then it's lit horribly in most of the shots. Like the first time you get a full look at it, it like shimmers. And it's not like Sting where it glows when orcs are around kind of shimmer. It's just, it's overexposed because this whole movie, like the light balance is just like way off all the time. Like not even getting into like color correction to try to have it not just like scene to scene or camera angle to camera angle, just like hits you with like, oh, the palette is totally different now. Like every time they're outside, it's overexposed. Like,
Oh,
like
it's so
clearly,
bad.
like the production values are like people who just have never done this before. And I'm not saying that I know how to do it a lot better. I'm just saying that like I know what it looks like when someone doesn't know what they're doing, because I do that all the time.
Also, from a plot perspective, which I know there is not much of in this movie, but from a plot perspective, what is the point of the Ranger? Because to me, it feels like she shows up and kind of helps them, but then doesn't really help them at all, because every time they have to go do something, she's like, I'll be waiting here. And it's like, okay.
Yeah, it's really weird. Like, so like at one point it seems like she may be like the head of the Empress's army, like, or like someone that the Empress sends to like
Right.
find them and find the scroll. And like so she's put on this mission. So you can say like, oh, maybe she's the Empress spy, which would have been really cool. But that never really, like, she reports back to the Empress, but she doesn't really go back the next time, and you never see any handoff to like any kind of bird or squirrel or anything. Like nothing.
Yeah.
There's nothing that says that she's like communicating other than that. And then she just follows them around, and it's just like, go on. Like she's like just there with sage advice, which by the way, like kind of also not a good look, because she's also black,
Yeah,
and it's kind of like
magical
the
black
magic,
character,
and that's not
Yeah.
cool either. Like, not a good look, Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, like I'll say who she is, which is that she is the DMPC. She is like an NPC introduced by the DM once they realized that the party was not going to go anywhere near where they needed to go, and they needed to railroad the plot. Like that is what the character is, but it's not what it should have been.
We had a conversation watching it the second time. We're like, okay, so which of these characters are PCs and which are NPCs versus DMPCs? And that one specifically, I was like, that's an NPC, right? That one is there specifically so that the dungeon master can be like, hey, you bunch of like deranged cats, please go this direction. Here is the exact information you need to know to go to the exact place that I need you to go to continue the plot line.
Yeah. How is the Empress aware of these things? Oh, well, this character is there exclusively to transfer information back and forth between the two.
Yeah.
And then to say, oh, this must be a journey only he takes, or things like that.
And then on top of it, when they get ambushed after they get out of the cave, the master tracker couldn't sense an ambush coming?
Couldn't hear anybody?
What is she there for if not to like be sneaky and make sure that they're safe?
Couldn't use those elven ears for nothing.
It's honestly,
Apparently.
it's probably I think the nipples on the armor were too loud, and she just couldn't hear anything over.
Just
that.
the gleaming
Over her
shine
erect
from the
nipples.
moon
She's
was
just like,
just blinding her.
My earballs are blinded.
Yeah.
It got cold, and all of a sudden there's just pinging sounds coming off the side of it.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, and that's how they were able to mark
A little volleyball that goes between the two, picking back and forth.
playing pong between her armor nipples.
Her nipples.
Or she was just disgusted. The dwarf started eating chicken again, and there was just so much chicken in his
It was
beard.
distracting.
Well, I have some thoughts about how you could make the elf chick. Again, none of these names matter because this movie is generic to generic. The only name that stands out is Snails, because why is his name fucking Snails?
Well, and also, it's the one name that you see written, right? So at the very end of
That's
the
true.
movie, it's the last name you see written, and then it disappears, and his friend is waiting for him. And we know this because the black elf tells him, again, not a good look.
Yeah.
She's not even the mage. She's not even the magic person.
Can I say the impression that I got from the movie was that the reason he is called Snails is because he is slow.
Sure.
That's
That's worse.
I mean, based on the
worse.
writing, that is what I got. I was like, okay, what's the most obvious thing? Oh, he's slow, which just adds to like the reprehensible treatment of black characters in this movie, which is just like, yeah, we're gonna give him the name that represents his like mental acuity,
Deficiency,
which is
yeah.
like you couldn't do nothing. That's what you.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, because if you try to describe anything about the character, it just sounds like you're like rattling off like racist tropes, because he's cowardly, he's lazy, he's slow, he's not very bright,
Yep.
he's cheap,
And,
Like,
and he hits on everyone.
Yes.
yeah, and he's a womanizer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it's terrible. It is
So
It's
bad.
it's really bad.
incredibly bad.
When I say
And-
justice for Snails, I mean justice for the writing of that character.
Yes.
right.
And honestly, it should happen. I mean, honestly, Snails should have never happened. He should have been a much better character.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, like it's such a weird moment too, because it's right around Scary Movie. Yeah, so Marlon Wayans is like, long after South Central while drinking your juice in the hood. Like, so like having that kind of a parody type character there is also one thing, but also Requiem for a Dream, same year.
Yeah. Well, and it's like I'm sure like he stayed in because paycheck, but also like Jeremy Irons is in this movie. Like the voice of Scar is in this movie. Jeremy, like you think to yourself like, I'm gonna be in a movie with Jeremy Irons. That's awesome. Oh, it's a fun like thing. Oh, I'm bringing the jokes. And then you're there and you're like, well, I guess I'm just going to stay here because I'm getting paid and I'm going to finish it so that I don't get marked as unprofessional. But like, honestly, it's not, this is not something I think he wants people to remember. And I guess I'm sorry to him that we
No.
brought it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's a little trivia fact on IMDb that when asked why he did the film, Jeremy Irons was like, "Are you kidding? I just bought a castle. I had to pay for it somehow." And I feel like that level of like, yeah, I had bills to pay, like really speaks to why anyone did this movie. It was like, yeah, I needed the money, or
I mean,
whatever.
also, actors, a lot of actors can't turn down jobs, even if they're terrible.
Yeah.
A job in a shitty movie is better, especially if it's going to theaters,
Yeah.
is still better. Well, arguably. I don't know how this affected anyone's careers. I know that the guy who produced and directed it didn't do anything for like 6 to 10 years after that. So probably has some kind of positive impact, but also maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, this is why like I'm not too upset about any of the actors, even Marlon Wayans, who like is doing
He's fine.
a thing, but I have to imagine that he was told to do that thing. It's like it doesn't make sense, but it's fine. Like, but it's the whole production itself was like shot, like cursed in the beginning because Wizards of the Coast didn't care. TSR already was like kind of trying to shoot it down anyway. Like way back early, or I shouldn't say. This makes it sound like
way
there's long
back in
periods.
the day.
No, but in the 80s, they had tried to do like a lot of like they had tried to license the Dungeons and Dragons brand and had some traction prior to the Satanic Panic like picking up, and then all of a sudden it becoming a poison pill. So like I understand that there was some desire in the past, but that was Gary Gygax's thing, and by this point he had been pushed out of TSR. So like I have to imagine that multimedia stuff was not really on their priority. And then when Wizards of the Coast bought it, they really didn't want to be involved in any sort of like crazy deals that had been made to some fucking 19-year-old a decade ago. Like it's a movie that no one wanted to have made, and the fact that it occurred is kind of amazing. Like there are moments where I look at the story and I'm like, oh yeah, this shouldn't exist, period. And like, wouldn't it be great if it was better? But I'm curious what we're all going to say in terms of like how you make this movie better, because like this might be the steepest slope that we have ever come up across on this show.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I feel like if we want to start down that route, I feel like the easiest way to make this movie better is to never fucking make the movie in the first place. Like, let's just not do it. Just don't. Keep making it at home with your friends. Shoot it on like, one of those 15-pound shoulder-mounted VCR cameras. You're gonna get a better shot anyways. And then put it in a box, bury it, and never dig it back up. And that is how you make this movie better. Thanks for listening to the episode. Let's run some ads, and we'll call it a day.
Yeah. When we'll come back, we'll have nothing but the... No, we'll actually take a serious swing at this when we get back. But in the meantime, ads!
Whee!
Video games are a unique medium.
They can tell stories,
Immerse us in strange, fantastic worlds.
blur the very boundaries of our reality.
But at the end of the day, video games are fun, whatever fun is to you.
I'm Jeff Moonen,
And I am Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
and on Fun and Games, we talk about the history, trends, and community of video games.
It's a celebration of all the games we play and all the fun we find within them.
And there's so many more games out there, so we hope you'll share in that conversation with us.
Fun and Games podcast with Matt and Jeff. Find us on certainpov.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
And happy gaming.
And we're back. All right. So let's fucking figure out how we could work on this movie and make it
I mean, here's the
a
thing.
viable project.
This is like D&D right now, okay? Like we have to class up, we have to get together, we have to come together like a fellowship and fix this fucking movie.
I just think the idea of having like a Princess Bride type situation can fix so many pieces like that don't make sense. It's like just be self-referential, understand the shortcomings, make jokes about them. Like you could almost have the exact same movie and with the right commentary around it, it wouldn't be good, but it would be something.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all had that same basic idea, and like I said, the producer, director, whatever, Courtney, didn't want to do that at the beginning point of this all because I think it was an idea that a lot of people had for it. So I do understand where you would want to dismiss that because I mean, at this point, what's the closest we've had to a real Dungeons and Dragons movie prior to this? Mazes and Monsters, the Tom Hanks thing, where he becomes obsessed with like the Satanic Panic view of Dungeons and Dragons. Like,
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that. And then there's like some animated stuff. So I get it. But like, you know, I think we all agree that like if it was using that framing device, it could either be very cool way to like tell a story in, you know, in retrospect, you know, the Princess Bride style where it's like telling it to a kid or explaining a game could all be very cool. You could do it where there's a bigger story going on outside of that with all the real people. But I think that's definitely not the movie they wanted to make here.
Yeah.
Although I think that would be a really cool movie if you had a love story about two characters who were who like met by playing D&D and then fell in love in the real world.
We literally
like,
talked about that. It's in our notes.
Oh, I feel like that would be really cool. Or you could do something where they're sucked into it, which I think was the deal with the cartoon. And I know there have been like book series like that. Like Critical Failure is one that I read a couple years back. But like a lot of people have had the idea of like, well, what if the players are sucked into it all? And then it could be like very Never-Ending Story style where you've got like it could be the Empress summons champions to her and like the players are all like, what the fuck? We're just all of a sudden in this world. Would at least like be an interesting way to sort of explain some of it. And you could do like
Jumanji-esque.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you could do like weird styles for everything. You could make, you know, you could lean into the bad special effects because like they're inside the game world and you can either stylize them more so they look like cartoony kind of things or just be, you know, like just lean into it. But, you know, I think that would work really well. I'm curious if that was actually in the cards. So why don't we get...
But Casey's not allowed to go first. That's breaking the rules of the game.
Like, why don't we get a little more granular into this? And like, because like, I think that framing structure we're all in agreement on. Like that would be the best way to do it because it addresses the budget issue. Because it could be like, I cast Fireball. You don't have the spells. Like cut back to the real world. You don't have the spell slots. I don't cast Fireball, and then like that way you don't have to deal with the special effects.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm also okay without doing the framing device. However, I do think it would work. But I'm okay with working through the confines of not adding that in.
Yeah, that's kind of what I think we have to at least take a crack at, like, how could you make it work if they really wanted it just to be like, this is a D&D movie, but we're not going to acknowledge the game parts, like the mechanics parts.
Cool.
So on that note, what Sam was alluding to is that I am not allowed to go before Sam.
Mm-hmm.
That's like
that's
one
against
big
the rules
rule.
of our game.
Well, it's not our one big rule because the other big rule is like it has to be like theoretically possible.
Right.
But
There's two big rules.
But Ben and Katie, you are our guests. Would you like Sam to go first, or would one of you, or the collaborative of you? Because you have so many notes. I love the document.
We have a lot of
Do
notes.
we want to run through our notes? And Sam, if you want to add any color, you can
Sure.
feel free to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Case is allowed to add color. He's allowed to collaborate. He's just not allowed to give all of his notes before me.
Because the second episode with her as co-host, I had a full outline for the movie.
I
And
love
it was
that.
so long. And I was like, and I would have put more Tim Curry in it. That was my note. It was
Okay, but when in doubt, yes, more Tim Curry.
I love
Honestly,
This
you
is
could
true.
fix this movie by adding Tim Curry. I don't know how.
Oh,
yeah, definitely. He could have
But
been the
he-
dragon, honestly.
Ooh,
Ooh, yeah, the voice
you know,
of the dragon.
the
Yes.
voice. Honestly, that does improve the movie for me significantly. I'll be honest.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that we have hit on a good chunk of our notes, specifically my biggest one being that you either need to commit to going a Lord of the Rings complex character route and really building out the motivations and the backstories and all that sort of things that it feels very real, or you have to go campy. And I feel like we got stuck right in between the two. As opposed, it was kind of pick a lane, and they couldn't quite figure out which lane they wanted to pick, so they kept swerving back and forth. And I do think that, sort of like you said, there is a way to go campy and be self-referential without doing the kind of third-person narrative perspective. There's definitely other avenues you could have taken. I think that was just the easiest for us to kind of conceive while not changing too much about the film itself. But I think that the biggest thing is deciding just off the jump, what tone are you going to be taking, and then committing to it. And if you're going to go with a more serious, sort of intense, emotional, whatever, then you need to spend some time fleshing the world and the characters out.
Yes.
You gotta give us a reason to care.
Yes.
Because at this point, you can go through the whole movie. I mean, I think, right, in the sense that this movie is incredibly forgettable, there is no reason for us to care at any point. There's no, I don't know why Jeremy Irons' character thinks that he, that leadership is rightfully his. You have an empress. You've had a royal family for arguably or presumably generations. How you think that it is rightfully yours is lost on me, and
There's
I don't really
no
care.
exposition of
No exposition.
maybe his family used to be the ruling class and just give us something, anything.
Or even shows that she has ineptitude in some way, something that they didn't do correct. Yeah.
No, they literally just do the whole if you're young, if you're not liberal when you're young, you don't have a heart, and if you're not conservative when you're old, you don't have a head. Kind of speech in there early on. It's she's young, obviously she's liberal. Again, getting back to this whole very, very unsophisticated look at politics.
Yes.
Yes. Also, no explanation for did she have an aunt or a mother who sort of taught her these principles and gave her a reason to be fighting for what she is fighting for? There's none of that.
Was she in a carriage that was attacked by bandits and a lowly farmer saved her, and thus
Literally, that would have been better than
go on a
whatever
quest
the-
with him, and that's why that would actually be really funny if the movie just as a whole was this idea of continuing D&D stories. So everyone was part of some campaign that has crossed paths at some point. And, the princess has already won her campaign, but is now getting fallout.
Yeah.
Ben, do you want to speak to the next couple notes?
Yeah. Specifically the animation budget one. Is that the one that you're thinking of?
Yes.
Yeah. So when you have such a limited animation budget, it feels like a good way to spend it is on moments that matter. And at the beginning of the movie, they spent a whole bunch of, I assume a whole bunch being, sort of a relative term in this context, a whole bunch of money.
High percentage of their animation budget.
Not by dollar value. On a dragon that they killed without in any way giving, there was no, it doesn't further the plot. It doesn't serve the plot in any way. The only thing that happens is they light the river on fire. And then the people all go, oh, those mages, they are doing the thing. Those wascally wascals. It's okay, but you've essentially wasted your budget on a dragon that does not matter.
Yeah.
We didn't get any exposition about why he doesn't have control or why that might be important. We don't get any kind of we don't get anything out of it. They just kill a dragon, and that's it.
Yeah, hashtag justice for that dragon, because that was really sad. It
Hashtag
was
justice for the dragon.
I was actually really sad. Like I really love I love dragons. And I was like really sad. Like I was like, oh, well, I guess this cements to me that he's like a real bad guy because I hate him now for killing the dragon. But like other than
especially because
that,
it's a gold dragon, and that should be kind of a selling point also on that one.
Yeah.
Like again, they don't ever explain what type of dragon.
no.
Right.
That could have been like great foreshadowing for the rest of the movie, right? Like, oh, okay, it's important that, you know, he's trying to create this staff that controls red dragons, and it's not working on the gold dragon, and also killing a gold dragon, presumably based on like their affiliation with the royal family, is like kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
Nothing. I think the note that I have on this is that that opening scene is the movie equivalent of like, this meeting could have been an email.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you could have had a generic line about how you need to be able to control them, or how like not controlling them is like important to this, and saved that budget for later.
Yeah, I actually have two, because I have a note about this one, but it's not really a pitch thing. But like, so my thought was, one, they're hitting us with the special effects too fast on this one. Also, like they're forcing you to deal with the terrible CG of this dragon right front and center, as opposed to like suckering you into this movie and then hitting you with it a little bit later. Like that is leading with your worst foot. But also, like, this scene would have been so much better if it was like, if they were just like ripping off Jurassic Park and they had them like bringing the dragon in to try to control it, and we never fucking see the dragon, and then they just like imply that it killed something, and they had to put it down by like shooting with crossbows
it off
or something.
screen.
Exactly. Like they could easily set that up. They could do a very similar type of scene. What, you know, maybe don't lean quite so much into like, is the staff working or something? It could just be they're trying to capture it, but before they get the staff. And you still get all of the same things going on there. And like, you can have blood coming out of this cage that we can't see inside of, but the blood is trickling out and then goes into the water. And then you still get the people being like, these mages, they're setting the rivers on fire. Like,
I
you
think,
keep those things.
I think
and have it be
also
cool.
we should see like people are like watching the fire, but they're watching it like they're like, whoa, damn you mages. But like there's no property damage, and I feel like there should have been property damage. Like I feel like there should have been like a real like, goddamn mages, now I gotta rebuild this again. You know, like it should feel like how like people feel about like the Avengers in New York. Like it should feel like, gosh darn it, I just fixed that sign. Are you fucking kidding me, Spider-Man?
My gondola!
You know, like
My cabbages!
Exactly.
My blueberries.
Exactly. All of those things. And you don't get that. Like you have that conversation and it's just like, but it kind of feels more like, oh, those crazy mages setting fire again. Like it doesn't feel like angry oppression, which you should like just a little property damage would have gone a long way on that.
Yeah. Shoot, have them burn like a fleet of fishing boats.
Yeah.
Like, have some fishermen nearby be like, that's like, I worked my entire life as like, you know, up until I was an adult to be able to afford my own fishing boat, and they've destroyed it. Like, I can't replace that.
I mean, honestly, you could have gone, that's my boat. You gotta be kidding me. And that would have been enough. You don't even and then just like have snails be like, they did it again. Damn mages.
Oh,
right?
darn it.
And just kind of like, now we've summed up everything, and it hasn't even added that much more time to the runtime, thankfully.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, here's how you could actually use it as a great introduction for snails and Ridley Freeborn. Like have them out on the water, having just stolen something, trying to get away quietly, and have the boat catch fire, and they have to jump out and they lose everything that they stole. And then they're climbing out being like, those damn mages. It's like we should report this. Well, but then they'd ask why we were out on the water. Like, well, we don't have to tell them that we were just like breaking into XYZ. Like, and then you set up your characters in a more dramatic scene and you establish the collateral damage.
Yeah.
So here's the only sticking point I think for that is then they would have to animate a boat on fire, and I don't know that would go over all that.
Well,
I don't know. Like, I think you could buy a pretty cheap boat and just set it on fire.
Oh, just actually.
Also, if you are hiding the dragon, you've now saved some money, and you can use it on the boat.
That's a good point.
Because now we've adjusted the dragon scene.
I think you can buy like a barely still afloat, like old fucking boat like, because we're just talking about something that like has paddles. Like, it doesn't have to be anything like
Yeah, it's true.
particularly
It could be
sophisticated.
a
You
literal
put a
rowboat.
bag in it, you draw like a little $sign on the bag, and then like you set it on fire and have the two actors get up before it gets too, there's a fire, but it's a controlled thing like inside the boat, like that you can't see with the camera, and then they jump out, and then you set the whole thing actually on fire.
Yeah.
You have a shot of it.
Yeah.
I think that'd be totally reasonable and a better use of funds.
Like, I bet you could make that like, especially considering like they're in Europe, like they're in Prague, like you could probably make this all work with like a really cheap, like I imagine you could probably make that shot happen for like $200 before you get into the actual like,
And I love those practical
actor
effects.
fees and everything else.
Practical effects are amazing.
Yeah.
I think that $200 was their whole special effects budget, though, so that could
Okay.
be the issue.
That could be the problem.
Yeah, there we go.
That could be it.
I'm looking through our notes, and so many of these notes are just like, make it make sense, please, more exposition. like
don't be racist, make it make sense.
Well, it's like I want to understand the history. Not all the mages seem bad, but they all seem to be. But there seems to be like a commentary on power and power corrupting. How did we get here? Are all of the mages complicit? Like, super unclear. We don't really get that definition of, like there's like the few that control the many, or it just makes it sound like all of the mages are corrupt. But then we get the girl mage who is not corrupt, and it seems like her mentor is also not corrupt.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all kind of jumbled, and I would like to see sort of whether it's, like maybe Jeremy Irons is sort of like the corruption that is kind of trickling down to the council. And it's not that mages necessarily want to have all of this power over the commoners. Maybe it's that like there's some sort of propaganda machine going on that's telling them like X, Y, and Z thing about common people, which could also create an interesting dynamic between Ripley or Ridley or fucking whatever his name is and the girl mage, kind of like figuring out that the other person isn't what they've been told the other person, like all that kind of stuff.
And there is some dialogue between them, which kind of supports this true separation of mages and commoners, where she's like, well, just like an uneducated commoner would blah, blah, blah. And he's like, well, just like a stuck-up mage would blah, 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 blah.
They're flirting like 12-year-olds.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like, okay, so if you've already kind of got this separation in the script, you can lean into that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think also you just need to, like, because there is some in the text, like, the teacher definitely does not hand over the scroll, definitely sacrifices his life to make sure that it doesn't end up with Jeremy Irons. So there is something there. I think it would be better to kind of make the school maybe like try to be the bastion of like, they're just certain institutions that like try to stay separate from like the politics of it. But really this headmaster is actually like kind of trying to change things and support the Empress, because somehow our female mage, who we should just learn people's names.
The lady mage.
Our lady mage. She knows, like she defends the Empress as if she knows the Empress, and as if she knows her agenda at some point.
Right.
And there's nowhere in the beginning of the film that you feel that she should have that connection to her. Like she definitely has her connection to her mentor who dies, but we don't get that. So we need somewhere in there for that mage to have had conversations or even just a letter from the Empress, even if it's just a voiceover where she's reading it. It's just like, my dearest friend, how are you at school? Like, I don't know, like
anything.
something of that matter, Lord Crazy Eyes, because I don't remember Journey Eyes' name either, because everything's so forgettable in this movie. It's really on my tookus. And like, I just like he doesn't see eye to eye with me. I need to make things right. You and your teacher, whose also name I don't remember, need to help me with blah, blah, blah. There's a scroll there. Can you please examine it? And then we know that's why the fucking scroll is there. And that is why it's happening. But we need something to connect them, because then later on, that doesn't make any sense.
It really...
I just looked up her name, and it's worse than I realized.
Oh, no.
Because it's Marina Pretensa, which this just feels like the placeholder names for characters, where it's like, oh, she's the pretentious one, or she's the pretense for why this is all happening. Like, none of these are good reasons for this name.
No. Marina's fine. I guess.
Marina's fine.
Marina's fine.
I'm sure that's why I didn't notice it before, but just I was like, wait. with that right next to Ridley Freeborn, I'm like, oh God, I can see what's going on here.
Well, he's freeborn. He doesn't belong to anyone. But
Oh, is that what it is? Wait, hold on.
I have 2.5 more things I want to touch on, but one of them is just that Ben and I made the same note, but I want to read our verbiages because they're very different. So Ben said, don't half-ass the old English for the blue-lipped guy. Whole ass or no ass. This isn't Shakespeare and his name isn't Bottom. Talking about how he kind of sometimes slips into this Shakespearean English.
What hast thou done? And you're like,
but then
what?
other times is just like completely talking normally.
He does it like 3 times.
My note about that was, blue lip baby needs to be all or none on Daddy Shakes.
The eloquence is astounding.
But both of you are right.
But
Yes.
we're both right. But no, the other thing I wanted to say was there were 2 other points that they just gave no exposition on that I would have loved to either seen dropped or had fleshed out. There's at one point where I think Merida, I forgot her name already.
Marina.
There we go. Talks about the Great War and about this big impact that the Great War had. And it is the first time you hear about it is like 3/4 of the way through the movie. And then they just keep talking about the Great War and how like all this happened. And they don't really explain why we give a fuck. Oh, sorry. Can you curse on here? I just realized.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I do it all the time.
Great. Awesome. But yeah, they don't explain like why we give a shit about this Great War, exactly what happened. There's like a little bit later on where it's like, oh, this guy died in the Great War. Why are you laughing at me, Benjamin?
I just like that you used give a fuck, and then the next time you said it, you used give a shit. That's like cool. You're like, yeah, I can swear I'm going to use a different one this time. Ha ha.
I don't know why we give a crap. It's fine.
Rolling it back to PG-13. Okay, rolling it back to primetime TV.
And then the second thing without any real like explanation is when they go to this guild. It's like, A, they know that the 3-eyed guy is part of the guild. Why? I don't know. B, they seem to know an awful lot about this guild and about why they need to get in. And like, is it that, you know, Snails and Freehold BB are members of this? Like,
I think they are, which surprised me when
conglomerate?
it happened. I was like, he started talking. I don't know if it was a con or if they're actually members of a thieves guild, but they're thieves and it's a thieves guild. So I feel like we need to be very clear about like, if they're not part of the guild and they're going to start pretending that way, we needed a scene setting up that they wanted to be members of the guild.
Yeah,
that had been kicked out or were never allowed
I
out.
actually thought that, like, I was like, oh, it would have been so much funnier. Like, it would have played for comedy if they had, you know, like, if they were like, oh, we can just go to the thieving guild. And Marina was like, oh, you guys belong to a guild? And they were both like,
No.
You know, just kind of like that look, like, well. And then you get there and the blue-eyed guy's like, no, you know you're not part of us.
Yeah.
Stop it. We already rejected you. You guys are terrible thieves. Like, and that would have been a lot funnier because it's like, you know, it's like she's like, oh, you guys have a solution. And then they're like,
Oh, here's what it could be. At the top of the movie, when they're in the rowboat, the thing that gets burned down was the thing that they had to steal in order to get into the Thieves Guild. And now they're no longer part of the or now they botched it, so they weren't allowed into the Thieves Guild. We could get a scene of them being like, "Now we'll never be in the Thieves Guild," and it's like only the people in the Thieves Guild have this. The Thieves Guild, you say?
Because also, if they were part of the Thieves Guild, then the reception that they get makes absolutely no sense.
But then they start talking, and I think he did say like we're like guild members or something like that, and
the impression
it was
I
like,
got
okay,
was that
cool,
there are
cool.
different thieves guilds and they're in a different town.
Yeah, different chapters.
Yeah. You know,
Yeah.
and like they don't like the different chapters don't necessarily get along because of, you know, internal politics, which, you know, makes sense, but give us something to work with so that we're not making these assumptions. I think
I'm glad that's the impression you got because I had no idea what was happening.
Yeah, no, I got the different like chapters kind of vibe because they're from a different town. So
I feel like the whole movie, I think that this speaks to why Katie and I have so many notes about like, please tell me more about this, is that the movie itself expects that you are willing to and will make all of these really big assumptions about backstory. And it's not that hard to put it in with, you know, like small exchanges between characters to be like, wow, man, I really wish that like, whatever, like we hadn't, like he maybe even like helped with, stealing from this guild for our guild, and that's why they don't like us, because we did that thing back, a couple of years ago when we were trying to get in, and then we fluffed that one up because we're not actually very adept at our jobs. Like there's any kind of like short exchanges between characters throughout the entirety of the movie that would make a lot of these things make significantly more sense. Or like, how do they even know that like, oh, so is it just all purple three-eyed people are in the Thieves Guild? Like, what?
Yeah. I mean, they saw him and they were just like,
that guy.
I mean, honestly, he was different colored, so is this another racist thing?
Yes.
I have to assume
that
that
guy
yes, it
must
is.
be a thief.
Like,
Look
he's
at
got
his
three
third
eyes
eye.
and purple skin. And you know what they say about people with purple skin? They're all in Thieves Guilds.
Yep.
And they all make weird hissing noises, even though there's no reason for them to be like...
Yeah, what that tongue thing? I was like, that's unnecessary. Like, I know you're trying to make him different, but that was an actor choice that I did not agree with. I was like, no,
I did not consent.
My guy, you're purple and have a 3-eye. You're good. You don't need to do anything else.
I mean, to his credit, he may have been practicing the scene thinking it was just going to be some basic face paint, like all the other people in the scene. Like,
and then they were like, just kidding.
There's like one dude where he's like, his whole face is painted purple, and then like clearly at his neck you can see like his flesh line, and then at his eye or at his eyelids, it's just like clearly like a Caucasian man.
I mean, it's just kind of moments like, and then I'll walk away and I'll do this slithering thing, but it's not like he's got a forked tongue or anything like that. There's nothing, and I'm like, that was a choice.
I will say though, the prosthetics on his head look pretty good.
Yeah,
pretty good. Yeah, like that was.
Yeah.
But yes, it was a weird thing, and the choice to be like, oh, clearly that guy, and not say why, because there's sort of this, like, again, this movie and racial politics are real weird here.
Yeah, super weird.
They could have shown him pickpocket someone, and they saw it because they've got good perception rolls because they're good thieves. Like, cool.
There's so much they could have done.
I mean, and again,
spot checks.
They could have seen him do a secret handshake with someone, and that's like part of like the guild. They're like, oh, that. Okay, let's go. And then he tried to do it, and it's like one off, and then he knows it's a different chapter. He's like, wait a minute, you're not from this town, you know?
Yeah.
You're not from around here, are you? Like,
the other
nope,
thing
we're not.
That I thought was kind of, I don't want to say funny, because funny gives it too much credit. But I feel like there were a couple moments where, and it may have just been really bad writing and really bad filmmaking, but it felt like, oh, like they just rolled a nat 1. And if they had just put some commentary around it to, again, be a little bit self-referential, like there's a moment when they're sneaking into the magic school.
Oh, and he goes, are you going to catch me? And he goes, yeah, I'm going to catch you. And then turns around and he proceeds to drop and not catch him.
Yeah. And it's like this, if you could just have like thrown in something about like rolling like a nat 1 or like, because it's such a short drop and it makes no sense. And it's kind of like, unless you're adding in those additional mechanics, that's just really lazy writing and direction.
Yeah.
Which I think is probably the theme of this whole conversation, right? Is like, maybe if we don't have lazy direction in writing, we actually have a halfway decent movie, even with all of the other issues. If you are able to give the actors some kind of direction. I mean, Jeremy Irons is an amazing actor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And his performance is incredibly lackluster. It's like, give him like a modicum of direction, or just tell him like, hey, look, do whatever you want with this character, as opposed to like, this is the vision I have, which doesn't come across. I don't know. I
mean, I think with him, it's just like he's doing a lot. I think he just doesn't know what any of it means.
Right.
And I
he's
think
trying
that's just
really
because
hard.
there is no actual meat to this script for anyone or anything. His villain is a carbon copy of a villain that you've seen anywhere. He's just a man who's after power, and the best way to get power apparently is to be in control of many, many dragons. That is,
which, to be fair, makes sense.
Is powerful. That's fair, yeah.
I mean, I'm just gonna say that from like a cost effective kind of thing, I would not, like, if I were a villain, this would not be my plan. I know it sounds really cool, but like dragons need to be fed. You need to have a place to put them. Like logistically, controlling lots of dragons, unless you have a space where you can put those dragons and you know exactly what kind of destruction you want those dragons to do, it's not actually logical. It's cool. It's cool as fuck, Case. And I know that's where you're going with it. I love dragons too, but it is not. It is a bad villain plan. It is bad.
Let me throw this other part about why it's a bad villain plan. Like, they live in the same city.
Yeah. Like this is not.
Like, it would make more sense if Jeremy Irons is in a different city and wants to burn down the capital city of the Empress and like wants to command a fleet into there.
Exactly.
But the fact that he's like, he also is like, they are both part of the same swamp. like he is like, let's burn the whole thing. Let's burn my home down is like his plan.
And here's the thing: if it was like one dragon, right? If it was one dragon. Like he was controlling the one dragon that lived close. And then you can use that as an enforcer. But a whole army, that's too many dragons. You can't feed that many dragons. The kingdom will go broke. Like financially, that is a bad plan.
Well, I mean, it's an invasion force. It's not a policing force. Like that's the other part of it. Like the plan doesn't make sense because they're not allowed to set up this like two like warring kingdoms kind of situation, which is what it probably should be if you're going to have like armies of dragons.
And listen, even as an invasion force, this is not cost effective. I'm just putting that out there. I just want people to think about that in the future. Like
just think
dragon
about it.
Warfare, not cost effective.
I mean, I feel like it's cost effective if you also instruct them to consume everyone that they come across, right? Like be a self-sustaining army, but also then at some point
you run out of people to rule.
Or
you just keeps. Well, if you don't care about your dragons and you just want to take over this one kingdom next to you, you command the dragons, you take over the kingdom by having them all be eaten and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then you're like, dragons, keep going. And then you just like set up shop at the new kingdom.
You know what? That makes a lot of sense. I do like that. I do like that plan, you know. So
it at least makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't work in this particular film because theoretically he would like to then continue to have power over some number of people.
Yes.
He probably would still like buildings.
I would assume. Buildings are nice. A roof over your head when you're trying to sleep as a like fancy pants mage seems like the kind of thing that you would go after.
Exactly.
No, unless he's like really introverted and his whole plan is just to empty out the city. Like he
violent introvert. I like
way more sinister, and I am here for that version.
What if this is just the Twilight Zone episode with the guy who like
wants to
really
read,
likes reading?
he needs to clear out the city. Like he's like, look, I could move to the countryside. Like I could find a cottage somewhere, but I like you know, plumbing. So I'm going to stay here, but I need everyone else to leave.
Just build plumbing?
No, not for him. He really likes his house. He's
a mage, not a plumber.
Yeah, that's what commoners are for, but he needs to get rid of them. So
all they do is talk because none of them are literate, so they won't shut up and read.
Yeah.
That's so true.
And therefore we have a fucking problem.
And so now we just have to get a bunch of dragons, you know, like you do with any kind of like great prey to like get rid of, like, you know, you get a cat if you have too many mice, right? So dragons are the equivalent, and apparently, according to him, I will just get all the people out of town.
I like it. I like this adoption.
Yeah.
Then he and the dragons can just chill, hang out. They're his only friends.
They can just hang. It'll be great. The last thing, I know I said I had two more, but I have one more thing, which is that there was a weird thing with Blue Lips, besides the fact that he speaks in half Shakespeare, and then
this thing is so important. Yes.
I hope we're talking about the same thing, because now you're
99%
teeing me up
sure.
to be very important, and I'm not sure if it is.
Don't fuck this up. This better be a big deal.
But so when he is interrogating Marina, Maduki, Poopy,
Marina, Miss Pretentious,
Marina, he says something to her about how, like, essentially, like, because he Proteus, I have this in my notes, which is why I know Jeremy Irons' name. Because Proteus. I thought it was Proteus.
No, it's Profian. I'm on the IMDb right now. I'm looking at it.
Well, I wrote down Proteus, which is apparently not correct. While I was watching the movie, which makes it even better. But while Profian like puts his earworm into him essentially, and he says to Marina, he's like, I'm only doing this because he's killing me, like I wouldn't do this otherwise. However, before the worm gets put into him, he is very much like a staunch follower of protein. And it's sort of like, it would have been more compelling, I think, if he had found out that Jeremy Irons was maybe not doing what he said he was doing, and in order to control him, he puts this thing in him and is sort of like, if you don't do what I say, you will die, which would give this added level of complexity of like, this isn't actually something that he wants to do, but if he doesn't do it, he'll have to die. Could also give him some sort of like self-sacrificing arc at some point. Like it didn't make sense. And I felt like there was an interesting way that could have been done. And instead we just got this weird, I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for this thing that wasn't in my head for the first 40 minutes of the movie, and I was still doing it.
Yeah, it is very odd that like all of a sudden he's just like, I didn't want to do this, and I'm like, bro, you watched him murder a dragon, like you were down, like you were in, like you've been there since day one, like
you were a day one homie.
Yeah, like so it was very odd. So yeah, it would either have to be that, or you just leave it as like, this is his punishment, right? Like, leave him as a true believer, which I think is actually much more fun. Like, I don't want to have to feel sorry for him. Leave him as a true believer, and leave your good and bad, black and white in this, and just have him be punished every time he fails with what's inside of him.
Yeah.
Because then it's better. Because he actually says, like, to his men, like, don't fail on this account or you'll be punished the way that I'm punished. And it's fine for him to be punished with this creature, because that just pushes along how evil Jeremy Irons' character is. That even someone who's, like, totally loyal to him and, like, does everything he says and is totally down for the cause, no matter what, he will still inflict pain on that person. And I was like, there was no reason for that. I felt like that scene should just be cut, because I was like, that doesn't make sense to me.
Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Like a reminder that, like, yes, this guy is evil. This guy, though, significantly more evil.
Right.
Yes.
And I think, like, if you want to rewrite that scene, instead of saying, like, I don't want to do this, actually have him be angry at her. And, like, kind of like, the pain. You're the reason I have this pain.
Yes.
You're the reason this is in my head. He's like, so now I have to end you, and hopefully my pain will end and I will be rewarded. And she can be like, you'll never be rewarded, or whatever. And then she can shoot fucking magic at him, because she never uses magic again after the first part of the film.
Yes, Fireball. Perfect. That's where Fireball comes in.
Like,
we found its moment.
But we have to do, like, the normal D&D Fireball thing where she's, like, looking for the spot that she has to shoot it, so she hits him but not herself.
Right. Yeah.
Excuse me, how far away from here is 5 meters?
I mean, it could even be like a cool moment where she like throws it and it's like, "Hi, you missed," and then like explodes behind him and like engulfs him.
Yeah.
As she turns away and walks away, because we all know that cool people don't look at explosions.
Yeah.
It's true.
With her hair blowing,
Ooh, true, like
backdraft
epic, like,
of the fair. Yeah. Do a whole bad
with her
boy
terrible
scene.
extensions.
Like,
Yeah, did we even talk about how the glasses came off and the hair came down between scenes? And they just never
we have not talked about it, but oh my god, like my wife could not stop talking about the extensions. And
it's a Wonderful Life Mary effect, where it's like, if she hadn't married you, she'd be old and wear glasses. And it's like, why is her eyesight different when she's married or unmarried? I don't understand.
It's love. Love makes your eyesight better, like Carrot. And
Yeah, for sure.
I do actually think that this is like kind of coming back to the thing that we all agreed we would not like continue to discuss the like way that we would make it better in the context of, which is like having that sort of like meta commentary of the kids like cracking jokes, like the dad's poorly written campaign from when he was like 12, or mom's poorly written campaign when she was 12, or whatever, was that the kids could be like, please tell me that her glasses aren't going to come off, her hair is going to get let down and she's going to be suddenly pretty. And the dad can be like, so about that. And then like you cut to the scene where like her hair is down and her glasses are off and suddenly she's pretty. And they're like, Dad, come on. That's so overplayed. And you're like, I was 12.
Yeah, you could definitely have like a plucky daughter being like, Dad, that's gross.
You're like, come on, really? And I feel like, at that point, like, sure, like, run with those tropes, enjoy those tropes, use them, just comment on them. And then, okay, now I will go back to, like, let's assume that we are not doing the movie that way.
Right.
I'm curious what Case's full rewrite of this looks like.
Well, Sam, have you...
Right.
Yeah, Sam, do you have any more notes?
Yeah, well, I actually just want to say that I definitely I love everything that you guys said, and I agree with a lot of it, and we did riff on that, and I like the changes that we definitely made. I would absolutely positively add in more. Well, first of all, Snails needs to be cleaned up, and like he actually needs to be funny. Like and he has to be given better lines, and I think I think we don't make him dumb. And I think, okay, so first and foremost, everyone needs to know what role they play in the team, because in this movie the biggest issue is that because everything is about the protagonist, the male protagonist, there's very little played to everyone else on the team. And like, even if people are like fuck ups on this team, we still have to know what role they're playing on the team. Like, they can't just be a dwarf because Gimli goes along like on Lord of the Rings. We need the dwarf to have a reason for being on the team, whether he's the muscle, which, by the way, hilarious, it would be great. Like, he's their little tank. That's great. I love a dwarven tank. But we have to know that everyone on this team has a role. Like, and even if it's not fully explained, we have to see them do actions in the team and in actions in the team where they are doing that. And if we are going to keep our elven ranger or tracker an NPC, that's fine. But then when she sends them off places, she needs to leave to go back to the Empress so that we include that person back into the story. And that way we don't lose the thread with what's going on there, and it doesn't even have to be her actually like a scene, like an extra scene with the Empress. It can be with her like, you must go in here. Oh, are you going to come with us? I'm so sorry. I need to get back to the Empress. Blah, blah, blah is happening. And then we know what's happening back at the council, and she can ride off. And now we know why she's not going into the fucking dungeon with them, right? Because, like, if we don't have that, then we don't know. I mean, do I think that she should? Yes, it would have been great that she would have gone in and helped them out. But it just... if you're going to run that route with her, then you just have to commit, and then have her actually let us know more of the story so that we tie back to this larger story that is never explained to us in any capacity, really, fully, so that we know what's happening, what the Empress is doing on her end, and we get that information from her. She becomes actually like basically someone who, gives us exposition. Like at the same time, she's informing. So I would do that, and then just have the stuff done as teams. I think it would have been so much more fun to have both Snails and Marina join him at the guild to run the thing, and it would have been cool for like it to be a breeze for Snails and oh God, what is his name? Rebel, whatever. I don't know. Flynn Rider. I'm going to call him Flynn Rider.
Flynn Rider.
Freebird.
Freebird, whatever his name is. Flynn Rider, and have her like be humbled, right? Because she's pretentious and she gives them shit up until this point. And now she can't do stuff, and they have to help her, and they have to help her do it. And so like, she's just like, oh, wow. And then later on, have her do something to redeem herself so that they gain mutual respect other than just telling us that they have respect for each other, which doesn't make sense. And also, people are not falling in love that easily. You don't even have to do it. You don't have to bring the love line in it at all. I'm fine with it not happening. Flirtationships are fine, but we don't have to do that. Also, Snails doesn't hit on anyone. He just wants to run away from people and actually make his obsession food, because that's just better.
Yes.
It's just better.
Yeah.
It's funnier.
Yes.
And they're thieves, so he probably doesn't get a meal very often. And, like, I thought one of the things that was funny was when she told them to leave, because she was being like, they've escaped from Blue Lips, and they're sitting there, and no actual names. So sorry, everyone. They've escaped from Blue Lips, and they're sitting there trying to figure out what the scroll means. And she's like, "Well, I can do it on my own." And they have like the fake, like, what is not actual flirting and just terrible writing.
The middle school flirting, yeah.
And they're like, and then they're like, "Well, fine, we'll leave." And he clearly doesn't want to leave. And he's like, "Actually, do you mind if we eat?" And I feel like that should have been Snails. Like, it should have been like,
Yes.
like he should like, "Fine, we'll leave." And Snails would be like, "Actually, since you bought this, you don't mind that we eat, right? Because we got food." And like he could be like, "Excuse me, Snails, like I'm trying to make a point." He's like, no, like honestly, we don't have any more money, and she just bought this, so we should like eat. Like we should eat, right? Because like they should be like on this case of desperation. And I feel like that would be funnier. And then like the dwarf shows up and he just sits down and starts eating, and they're like, and Snails is like, "Excuse me," and he's just like, "Oh, I thought it was free food." And like that's how he joins the fucking team. Like it's just like he thought it was free food. So like she's like, "Sure, anyone can help themselves." And the dwarf's like, "Oh, really?
Sick.
Hi, my name is Sven." I don't know what his actual name is. And
It's Elwood Gutworthy.
actually, that's a great name.
It is.
I'm Elwood Goatworthy. And like Stance is like, "Seriously?" And he's just like, "Really?" And they just kind of stare at each other, and you got tension from them, and then they both just start eating, and that would have been great. And that's how he joins them. And he's like, "Oh, I like a scroll, I can help." Like, give him some lines, and that would be great. That would be great because people join all the time in weird ways in taverns, and people will be like, "Yeah, that's great." So really, for me, everything just has to do with the team. I don't even know how to fix the end, y'all. Like that's a hot mess. But I think this movie would have been 10 times more enjoyable if there was team actions and there was real interactions between everyone, earning respect, friendship, because that's what D&D is. D&D is shit talking with your friends. And so, like, honestly, that's devoid of this film, and that's the saddest part. Case, take us home.
All right. Well, first up, a thing that I think would be really funny with Snail's death, like if you want to keep like a big dramatic death and whatnot for the character, like is if after Snails is dead, they introduce a new character who just gets along really well with Freeborn. And it's just the character is re-rolled by someone. Like just,
God.
Don't go into like, not even dealing with a framing device. Just like, here's the meta narrative of like, oh yeah, like all of a sudden, like there's a sorcerer with the group now. And like, he just like clicks really well.
And have him be Marlon Wayans. Like have the same actor play him, different costume.
Or like a different Wayans brother.
Yeah, or yes. And just have him come in and just be like, "Hi, I'm a cleric now," and just
yeah. Well,
it could just be it could be Snail's brother.
yeah.
It's like, the classic
it's Landfill.
trope.
Oh, it's Landgill. Okay.
Or twin brother.
Yeah. It's I don't know, like hermit crab, right? Like
Right.
whatever.
Slug.
Urchin.
Slugger.
Yeah.
Slugger. It's a
Slugger.
barbarian and his name's Slugger.
Yes, perfect. Wait,
anyway,
hold on.
so-
Case, before you get into all your things, I do have one quick question for the group, because Katie and I talked about this when we were watching it, and there's a moment, and it's like the only real line that the dwarf gets, and it's when he looks at the camera and he goes, "That's a terrible way to do business." And I was like, oh, fourth wall break. And Katie was like, I think it's just like supposed to be comedic and like him talking to himself. What is the impression that you guys got from that?
I mean, I think that it is so. It's playing soft on the fourth wall break because like it is definitely looking at the camera kind of moment.
Yeah.
But I think that it's allowing for a scenario of like, oh, he's just like saying a funny line to the camera, but it's not necessarily.
Yeah.
It's not going into the framing device, I guess.
Yeah,
But-
I felt like he was more saying it to himself, but then
Yeah.
exactly like Kate, like
Right.
Case, like very soft, like are we doing this?
fourth wall.
Maybe, but
Yeah,
it's like
it's knocking on it, but not fully breaking.
Yeah.
I'm like, but you're
I-
not the character to do it, sir. Like you don't even have a character. You just have food in your beard. That's the biggest problem with this script.
I feel like they could have done more with that, and it could have been funny just throughout the whole film. But that's sort of an aside. Sorry, I was
Honestly,
just kind
That's
of
the meta
curious.
commentary
Yeah.
again.
It would
Yeah.
have been great if that was
Yeah.
Snails too.
Yeah,
Like
Yeah.
like just like give him like a moment to be like, wait, we're doing what? And like look into the camera and be like, and then go on and do it. You know, like
yeah. I feel like there are like these little moments throughout the film where it's like, oh, you had a good idea, you just never followed through, and you never applied it to any other part of the film.
I also feel like every good idea that's there is like a seed and is watered down. It's like even that where it's like that could have been a fun fourth wall break, but instead of just committing, you kind of towed the line. Same with the tone. I feel like there's so much line towing in this movie where it's like you can't pick what you want it to be, so instead it's nothing.
Right. It's afraid to go fully camp. It's afraid to. It doesn't have the budget to be fully serious, so it kind of ends up in these sort of like halfway points for everything. Yeah, I totally agree on that front. Because it would be fun if it was like at some point someone just said our DM hates us. What was that? Never mind. Yeah, because like it'd be great, and then you don't even need to do the framing device of the D&D. But if the characters just kept on being like, "Oh, that was a critical fail," like had moments where they were aware of it, we'd also be cool with it. Like that would be a lot of fun. Like this movie could be fun, which is like a novel concept here. So I have a bigger change and a smaller change version of it because I can't help but do a bigger change one, but also I am not sure that it could have been done based on the actual logistics of this whole movie. So bigger change one is appeal to Wizards of the Coast and say, hey, this movie is coming out right at the time that you're launching 3rd edition. Lean into the things that are cool about 3rd edition specifically. And I think that every single hero should be a class from 3rd edition, like from the 3rd edition player's handbook. And then the villain should be all the prestige classes from the DMG. Like, just like lean in real hard because you know what? What's man, we are so bad with names. Blue Lips.
Damodar.
Yeah. So like, if he was a blackguard or an the anti-paladin update for 3rd edition, like how much cooler would that be if he was one of the holy knights that were protecting the empress and whatnot, and he betrayed her, like, and you just like set him up as like, okay, he's a blackguard, and then you could have all these like characters, and that's why I specifically said sorceress joins the group later, because you know that like it could be like, oh well, he's good with magic, oh but he was kicked out of the school and he's just like getting by on like his like natural charm and natural magic, because then you lean in, like you've got Freeborn be the bard, you've got Snails be the rogue, like it's already kind of set up in there, like you know, just like lean into it a little bit more in terms of like, okay, well they've got a barbarian who's traveling with them for a little while, a slugger if we want to do that also. You know, you're like your dwarf fighter, sure, that makes sense. Elf ranger, yeah, we're not, you know, creating any new ground here, but like
breaking any glass ceilings or anything like that.
Exactly, but it's fine. Like we know. In fact, they both actually look just like the character, like the iconic artwork in the 3rd edition DMG. It is a dwarf fighter and an elven ranger, and they look really close, like it already. And just lean into those moments of that, because like, admittedly, 3rd edition doesn't necessarily break new ground in terms of like the lore and the setting of it all. Like a lot of it's mechanical stuff, introduced, like getting away from Thaco in favor of like Bab, and like trying to simplify everything to like basic D20 rolls. But hey, this, you know, it'd be cool if we did the framing device. That'd be really dope. We could like explain how all that works. That's all fun too. But even if you're not, like, have the classes be 1-to-1, have points where we reference this all, like really kind of lean into those areas. You can do all the prestige classes as the villains because that was how they were supposed to be designed anyway, and have fun with that whole situation. I think that, you know, if we're doing a big rewrite, it would really make sense for Marina Pretensa, the pretentious girl. Like when she gets away with a paladin, like a knight who's like protecting her, and then gathers everyone together. And so that way you can get the natural interplay of a paladin and a rogue, which is one of the best dynamics of any parties, because you always have like wonderful bickering between the two, where it's like, oh, we have to steal something. Stealing's wrong. Like, but no, we have to steal something to save the kingdom. God, I don't know what to do. You just sit over there. We'll be right back. Like
close
those
your
kind of
eyes,
moments.
earmuffs. It'll be fun.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Great moments for that. You know, we could really lean into sort of like the comedy of that relationship. We can have, we could set up some more, like there are spots where like clearly they just like try to write around scenes that they couldn't shoot or anything like that. Like when they get sucked into the map and then they pop back out. Like I thought that was a great mechanism for storytelling that is horribly underutilized, because it would have been such a good joke to pop out and have them be like, art, like everything's like settled, everything is good. Everyone's like, hey, wait, what just happened here? It's like, oh, like craziest stuff, and like have it be a little bit of a noodle incident. Like no one else is aware of what happened on the inside, but like the two that went inside the map have like really strong feelings about it all, and like there's a lot of changes in the relationship as a result. Like those would be fun kind of things. And I think that would all work really well in terms of just selling D&D as a whole. But assuming that you couldn't quite go so far in that one, because like supposedly when this movie got greenlit as it was, they were only allowed to use an earlier draft of the script. So I have to imagine that you can't get too crazy on the rewrites. Like for whatever reasons that we're talking about here, like you can't do a wildly different movie from what was approved. But you know what you could do? You could recut the movie into a much better configuration and shoot it better. And so my thought is like, like even if you're not technically allowed to reorder the scenes beforehand when you go into filming, like you just plan to do so, and you have some good notes about this one, and you open at the tavern. Maybe do the Jurassic Park scene that we were talking about as the cold opening. Like keep that in there. Like that's still like kind of fun, and like if it's shot in an interesting way, is exciting and cool. And like I said, we're just ripping off Jurassic Park. Fun. Then cut to the tavern, and you can have a similar scene, and they can rewrite the dialogue a bit and like have it be like, okay, why are we called all here? Oh, the mage girl called everyone here. Or better yet, the elf girl called everyone here, if you can insert her character. But even if you can't, like the mage girl called them here because they have to steal this thing because like she has to explain why. And then all the scenes that are all these expository bits can be flashbacks or can be them telling stories, because I think, again, there's the storytelling component of D&D that you should also be conveying, and give the sense that this isn't all just backstory leading up to the quest for this one character. They all are on their own respective quests, because again, the problem of this movie is that it's trying to do this like one character's hero's journey, but D&D, the magic of it is when everyone feels like they're the hero of the campaign. So we should try to establish that a bit more and have like, Snails is kind of stuck as being a sidekick, but everyone else should kind of feel like they're on their important quests. And it's like, wait, but Dwarf, how did you get here? Oh, they just found me in a pile of garbage. Oh,
where are the backstories? I've been screaming it.
and again, justice for Snails. He doesn't have to stay as a sidekick. Like he can just be a friend. He can be a friend. Like it's just the way that it's written. Like everyone is technically the sidekick to the male protagonist, to Flynn Rider. Like everyone is to Mr. Freebird. Like
Winona Freeborn.
Yeah, like everyone is basically just there. I mean, even the Empress is a side character to him. Like,
yeah,
So that's the thing that's the most disappointing.
Yeah. Or if you really want like a good twist, like they're all brought together to steal a thing by someone who is a shadowy figure, and it turns out to be an agent of Irons. It could be Purple Lips or Blue Lips himself. Like that would be workable situations for it all. I mean, like ultimately, I think we all like the framing device the most. It's just like, how do we make it all kind of fit? And it sucks that this movie is just not budgeted well enough, and it came out at the exact wrong time for us to say like, oh, well, these special effects things are easy. Like it was 2000. There's like
good movies came out in 2000.
Ben made a list of all the movies that came out in 2000.
Like very good movies came out in 2000. There is no excuse.
Fair, but I'm just saying that in terms of some of the effects for someone who doesn't know what they're doing. Yeah. Like the movie should focus more on the human stuff at the beginning and not really deal with the magic stuff until later on, so that we're actually like kind of lured into it all. We shouldn't be seeing big special effects at the start, and it should be things that we start seeing bits and pieces of it, and as we go. I really think that the first half of the second act should just be that giant dungeon, or like the guts dungeon. Make it bigger. Like that'd be great. I realize that they probably couldn't think of anything. Like they'd have to invent the traps for them to go through, and they probably just weren't creative enough to figure out the traps, at least not at that early draft. Like,
right.
Again, this feels like an early draft. They're like, we'll flesh this out later. And maybe they did at a certain point, and then had to go back to like, yeah, there's a fucking dungeon, man. I think they have to go to.
I mean, I will say this in defense of the special effects. I've watched a lot of really bad science fiction movies. I've watched a lot of really bad stuff, even on the Sci-Fi Network. I will watch things with bad special effects. but this movie's just not fun. So it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. You can't forgive. Like people wouldn't have cared. Like they would have been made fun of. It would have been made fun of. Like, but people fucking watch stuff like Sharknado, okay? Like people like watch things like that. So like that's not the big problem. The problem is that this script is not good.
Going,
I mean, it's got a Wayans brother in it. They could have leaned into that sort of like, this is a full-on goof about kind of fantasy movies.
yeah.
But also, it's like a year before that became the thing to do. Like, if this movie had come out a year later, or 2 years later, I guess, with like Fellowship of the Rings already being out, and they could like really be like riffing on like the new
Yeah.
wave of fantasy tropes.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I'm trying to think about what else had just come out at this point. Like, Aragon? Like what big
Did
fantasy
they make
movies
that
have
into
people
a
actually...
movie?
Yeah.
It's not good.
I somehow
Also with
missed
Jeremy
that.
Irons. Wait.
what?
Yeah.
Jeremy Irons, what were
I
you
believe-
doing in 2000? I guess 1999 would be when he filmed it. But the one issue that I did have with The Maze that I would change is when he finally gets into that last room, he just fucking picks the thing up. There's no like traps or like usually think about
Yeah.
like Indiana Jones, like when he picks up the thing and then it's like, oh shit, picking it up, triggered, whatever. I was expecting something like that to sort of round out the experience.
Yeah.
And instead he just picks it up and everyone's like, well, shit. All right, cool.
Yeah, he just got like the one warning and that was it.
Yeah.
Okay, the Aragon came out a few years later,
Oh,
actually.
okay.
So it was 2006. So not quite there, but
Close.
yeah, I mean, because when this movie was first pitched, it was like 1990, and it's in the wave of like a lot of the 80s fantasy movies like Legend or like Conan the Barbarian, you know, like where we're like movies that are either a lot of style or like honestly like fairly fun, but like low magic kind of movies. So they wanted to do something kind of different from that, but I don't know if the audience had the lexicon to describe what they were trying to poke fun at or like deal with, or that they should have been trying to poke fun at and deal with if we're going to do a parody at this exact window. But like 3 years later, they definitely would have.
Yeah, you're right, because a lot of the fantasy magic movies that had come before that are very spread out, right? So you've got like Excalibur and Lady Hawk and you know and Legend, but those are happening like years and years apart, and so it's not really like present the way like space alien movies were for like Spaceballs, right? Where you could make fun of Star Wars and you can make fun of aliens and like a whole bunch of different like space opera odysseys in one movie that became a spoof. So yeah, that's not possible yet, like for this, because it's just too far apart. Like there's only so many like King Arthur's tales that you can spoof.
Yes.
That's true.
I mean, because it would be fun if they did a movie that was like, if it wasn't a spoof, like full camp. Like, can you imagine something that was just like super bright colors for everything? Like everyone's like crazy over the top. Everyone is being like a wild kind of thing. And like, there's like, I mean, this would be where it could be like an implied, like they're all player characters in a bigger D&D game, but everyone is being like verbose. Maybe even the characters are specifically like, we'll forget details and have all the elements that would actually like play along with it, where there is no framing device that is on screen, but we all understand it throughout the whole movie.
Yes.
But then also I'm still curious, at this time, would the audience have gotten it? Because the D&D fans would have, but D&D was so much smaller at this point.
Here's what I will say. They could have gone the route of like Robin Hood Men in Tights, which predates this, right? Like you have a basis upon which to go like campy, medieval, funny, like people will get it. Whether or not you play D&D, you know, sure, are there some jokes in there that you probably wouldn't get? Yeah, absolutely. But Robin Hood Men in Tights exists at this point in time. Like the framework for you to do a movie in that vein has been laid, right? Like you can lean into that like tropey fun stuff. You've got all like kind of in a lot of the ways you've got all like the characters, right? You've got Dave Chappelle being like a really funny but not dumb character with, you know, like funny things like pumping up his sneakers, like, you know, weird shit where you're like, this is topical to, you know, pop culture of the time. and very entertaining. There's no reason to not go that route if you don't want to.
And Men in Tights is still a
That's
bop.
true.
That song is
Yeah.
still a bop.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I will say that Men in Tights, though, is directly coming in the heels of Prince of Thieves, and Robin Hood has a very strong tradition.
That
of
is fair.
film,
Yes,
Yes.
that is a
Yeah.
fair point. Yeah.
parroting. But I agree. I think that probably, like I said, just a couple more years later, it would be even. And it's not even like D&D so much as just like fantasy movies in the window of the 90s. Like there was Dragonheart. They exist.
Dragonheart.
But
So
there
good.
isn't the same. There wasn't like a big hit the way that like right after this is the Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter back to back, and you could be referencing things and just expect the general audience to like get the jokes and be with you on it all. Like it would work, but it might not be one that would be a hit.
Sure.
Yeah.
But also in 2000, I don't know.
But
what would have
also,
been
was
in
this a
2000.
hit?
Like no.
No.
Yeah, this is a failure on all fronts. So like just a better movie
Yeah.
would have been.
I mean, like,
Yeah.
honestly,
Better.
the movie that we're talking about could have been a cult classic Case. It
could
would have been a hit, but it
Yeah.
would have at least gotten a better review from me. I've cracked more jokes than this movie did on this movie
Yes.
during this podcast.
I think this is a wild take, but I think I'd rather watch The Room.
I mean,
Oh,
yeah.
definitely.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like this is a bad movie, but it's not like bad funny. It's just it's just boring.
It's just yeah, it's forgettable bad.
It's because it's devoid of joy. It's not even like it's not even that like the performances aren't great, but they're not even that. They're not terrible. They're not horrible. It's not like you roll your eyes every time. Like the lines are bad, but like the performances aren't. They're whatever. They're fine. They're fine.
Yeah.
And like there are some things in the movie that are fine. Like there are people that are there to do the work, definitely, right? And some of the dragons look okay. It's just that everything's brown and it's boring. It's a boring palette.
It's a glowing review.
It's a boring palette, yeah. And so like in the grand scheme of things, it's not like something that you would sit around and watch and repeat with your friends and laugh and create drinking games about, which you would do with The Room. Like you're not going to do that with this. I'm never going to watch this again after this.
We had to watch it twice, which was
Well, we did 1.5 times.
1.5. We had to stop halfway through the second
we
one.
got.
We're
I think we got to like
can't.
an hour in. We're just like, I just don't want to anymore. I when you hit a wall and you're like, I can't do it. I gotta walk away from this. We hit absolutely that moment. We just kind of looked at each other and we're like, I think I'm just gonna call it.
Like I think we're prepared as we can be right now.
I mean, I imagine that Courtney Solomon hit that point too when this movie was being
That's
worked
fair.
on.
That's
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah.
Empathy for Courtney.
And listen,
Yeah.
I don't have any hate for anyone who worked on this. Like,
No.
making movies is hard. I would like to say that because I did crack a lot of jokes on it. Making movies it's a hard thing.
Yeah.
And we have the ability to, we're taking another pass. We have hindsight. We're like, ooh, that was a bad choice. But I will say, like, this is not a good movie. You don't have to watch it. Don't watch it. Do I recommend? No. 0 out of
No.
10.
Yeah.
Don't watch.
It's not even like watch it or don't watch it unless you're a masochist. It's truly just don't
Don't
do it.
bother.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does not enrich your experience in any way.
No.
Like if I were doing laundry and it was in the background, I would still go find something else, and I might even just watch cable news
Yeah.
over it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
It's
even
an
like
hour.
cable news.
It's an hour and 47 minutes that you truly will just never get back. And you could spend that hour and 47 minutes doing probably literally anything else, and it's a better use of your time.
Yeah.
God.
It's so true.
I truly hope that like, God forbid any of the people that were ever in this listen to this or hear anything about it is not personal.
I do feel like the people who were in this movie or worked on this movie know that this movie
I think so.
I
Yeah.
have to imagine.
was not good.
Yeah, pretty much. Like the quotes I could find all indicated that everyone was fairly aware of the lack of needle pushing on their careers that this movie was.
Some of them, their needle got pushed a little bit backwards.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we've hit the wall, which is just how steep the slope to get up to making this a good movie was. It was basically just a solid wall. So, Ben, as you said, if you have 2 hours ish of free time and you shouldn't watch this movie, what's a thing that they can do instead? Why don't the two of you give your plugs and for content that would be better than this?
See, I was going to say watch Andor because we started it last night, but I don't think that's what you're going for.
No.
Well, I agree with it. Andor's good. But also, what else could they do?
What else could they do, Katie?
Oh, I thought you were going to.
Okay, I'll
that's fine.
start. No, go ahead. You're better at the plugs than I am. I'll be totally honest. I'm so bad at plugging things.
Clearly, we're really bad at self-promotion. What you could do instead is you could go to twitch.tv/Amateurish Productions or Amateurish Productions on YouTube. And you could watch some combination of TTRPGs with a pretty heavy focus on D&D. Hopefully better plots than Dungeons and Dragons had, and as well as some interviews. We do have some World of Warcraft streams that are up on our YouTube, and also a bit of just like fantasy world building and TTRPG creation, which has been super fun. I'm probably forgetting other things that we do. So Ben, if you have any other plugs you'd like to throw in, please help.
Yeah, well, so by the time this comes out, we will have started our actual play campaign about a month prior. So that happens on some night of the week at a time.
Tuesday at 9 p.m.
That's the one.
Starting in January.
There you go. As well as probably sometime around when this episode comes out, we are intending to have a podcast as well, where we talk to people who have expertise in various subjects. That's going to be called How the Fuck, and where we ask them how the fuck they do their job. And it'll be everything from, like writing to movie production to, like
voice
RPG
acting.
things, voice acting, sort of like spanning the full gamut. And as we continue to find people who do interesting things, we're going to casting. We have one of Katie's high school friends? Middle school friends? High school friends did casting on a bunch of Marvel movies. So we're going to talk to her about casting and what that's like. So it's just like a full spectrum conversation piece where we learn a little bit about what it is they do and share that with everyone who, is interested.
We have so many amazing people lined up to interview and have had exactly 0 time to do any of the interviews. So when it happens, it's going to be awesome, but just stay tuned because we'll see when it happens.
Yeah.
But until then, twitch.tv/Amateurish Productions.
Yeah, and by the time this is dropping, assuming all goes well, the Pathfinder game that we had talked about doing will be happening as well there.
Yes.
But that's going to be a limited engagement since I have only so many spoons. But
I feel that so deeply in my soul and in my heart.
just like washing the same spoon, being like, please don't fail me now.
Assembly line of trying to clean spoons fast enough.
It's just,
the only way to keep
two
going.
spoons, and he's just rotating the both of them. Only one of them is operational at any given time.
Boy, is that relatable.
And give social handles, by the way, Ben and Katie. If people want to find you, follow you, where can they do so?
I am Katie Mera. Mera has an H, so KATIEMEHERA on all of the socials, which is Instagram, Twitter, and Hive. And that's all the socials that I have. So those are all the socials. And I do have a TikTok, but I don't use it. So please don't follow me there. I just use it to scroll.
Ye old doom scroll.
I've had some people follow me on my TikTok and I'm like, oh no, there's nothing for you to see here.
Empty
it's just
expanse.
where I peep.
I am Ben_M_squared on, I think, pretty much all of my social media at this point.
Aren't you Ben_Mar_Moo on Twitter?
No, I changed that. I brought it all into line because it's easier to remember one, and also I would forget.
That's fair.
Yeah. And I'm on Twitter and Hive and Mastodon and Instagram, and I also have a TikTok that I also don't post.
We're really bad at this.
I have one video, and it's a response video to someone being like,
what's it like being
being old. And I was like, you ever heard of hemorrhoids? You will. And that is the one video that I have posted on my TikTok. Because it was like he was talking about people over 30, and I was like, how dare you, sir?
So I think the TLDR is Katie Mara, Benham Squared. Don't follow us on TikTok.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah. We'll see when this comes out, if the dust is settled on the whole Twitter thing, and like where we're all hanging, where the party at.
Yeah. We'll figure that one out as we go.
We'll find out.
But if the dust is still settling, Sam, where the party at for you?
Well, here at Another Pass, you can find me here, and you can sometimes find me at the Discord when I decide to show up or remember that it exists. And then nowhere else, because I'm lost in a dungeon somewhere with a very unreliable rogue, and it's just terrible. And I'm just waiting for Case to answer a message so that I can get out of here. And you can find Case.
Well, when I decide to answer that message cantrip from you, I will be responding probably on Twitter as long as it lasts, which is at Case Aiken. Hive, I set up at Case Aiken. Mastodon, I don't remember what the hell it was trying to be at Case Aiken, but it's weird and I don't fully understand Mastodon. And then just to be weird, my Instagram is Quetzalcoatl5 because I am holding on to that AIM screen name from when I was in high school, where I am both a mythology nerd and a Legion of Superheroes nerd.
I love it. It's great.
So you can find me there. You can find the podcast on Twitter at Another Pass. You can find all of the stuff that we're working on over at certainpov.com, where you can find more episodes of this show, tons of other great shows. I also host Men of Steel over there, and I'm also the person doing all the video content on our YouTube channel, which is Certain POV Media. So check out clips from this show, clips from Men of Steel, clips from Fun and Games and the side quest videos, and check out my Superman analog series over there on our YouTube channel. So check all that out. Then circle back, head over to certainpov.com, find all the great shows. I'm going to give a shout out to Let's Rewatch, which is not actually how I know Pat Edwards, but it's Pat Edwards' show, and he is the one who introduced us.
Woo-hoo!
So
Yay, Pat!
Big
Pat
shout
is
out to
great.
Pat. Pat's the best.
Yeah. If there is anyone who is great at just networking, it is Pat Edwards. He is a great person, and he has a great group of people on that show along with him. Brett, Sam, and Ash are all awesome. Let's Rewatch is super dope. You should check it out. It's a lot of fun. It's like this, where you watch the movie in the middle of the episode. So
Amazing.
Check that out. That's a great one. And then check out what we've got coming up next. Sam, what have we got next?
Next time, we'll be talking about Highlander 2, The Quickening. But until then, if you enjoyed this, pass it on.
Thanks for listening to Certain Point of View's Another Pass podcast. Don't miss an episode. Just subscribe and review the show on iTunes. Just go to certainpov.com.
Another Pass is a Certain POV production. Our hosts are Sam Alisea and Case Aiken. The show is edited by Matt Storm. Our logo and episode art is by Case Aiken. Our intro theme is by Vin Macri, and our outro theme is by Matt Brogan.
I mean, it looks like it's recording locally. There's little things for sound, so I'm just gonna leave it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
hope for the best.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's why we're all about backups on Another Pass, because hope for the best is often the best way to handle it, but at the same time, we want to make sure we don't have to re-record.
Absolutely.
And it's just so that there's something on the timeline, so that when the editor is looking at it,
Yeah, it's just for Matt.
Yeah.
Hi,
Makes
Matt. Wonderful.
Hello, Matt.
Hi, Matt.
Hi, Matt.
Hi, Matt.
Hi, Matt.
Matt's like, God damn it, God.
No, he loves
Future
it.
Matt.
He loves
Oh,
it.
When we are
All right,
recording this,
excellent.
Matt is currently in the process of going through our 5-part Planet of the Apes retrospective.
Oh.
So far, all of them have been over 2 hours. So,
Oh.
Yeah, he's fine. He's fine. He loves it.
yeah.
Thank you, Matt. Matt, thank you so much for everything
Yes,
that you
Matt.
do. And say hi to Otis. That's his dog.
Hi, Otis.
Hi, Otis.
Hi, Matt.
Hello.
Hi, Matt. Hi, Otis.
Hello again. Yes. It is I, the disembodied voice in the recording.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.